tell you, it would help me if y'all could just take a minute and introduce your team to me. I mean, just tell me a little something about yourselves. Name's the most important thing, and what role you have with the city, and that'll just help me understand what I'm up against.
Can we do the others too, because some of us are new?
Okay, just whoever, I mean, sing out first.
Okay, I'm Yasmin Chapman, Director of Human Resources for the City of Corpus Christi.
Director of Human Resources?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Susan Thorpe, Assistant City Manager for Safety, Health, and Neighborhoods. So police and fire are in my group of departments.
Okay.
Roxanna Stevens.
I know
City
you.
Attorney,
Yeah,
Lead Negotiator.
I got you.
Morning, Richard Quintero, Deputy Fire Chief.
Okay.
Stephen Vieira, Benefits Manager.
And Vieira is V-I-E,
VIERA,
and you're the finance manager?
Benefits Manager.
Okay. And who are your backbenchers there?
Lillian Castro, City Attorney.
Renato Garcia, Assistant City.
I'm sorry.
Renato Garcia.
Renatto.
Okay, and is he also an assistant city attorney?
Yes.
Okay.
Morning, I'm Andy Cardiello, I'm Assistant Fire Chief.
I'm sorry, sir, your last name is?
C-A-R-D-I-E-L.
Okay.
And Craig, I'll give you something that I
Can we-
think will help.
Know who are these people?
Right.
I don't, but.
Yeah, and let me do something real quick.
Okay.
What I'm gonna do to help you out, Craig, is, as you know, we're here pursuant to that Rule 11 in the, ground, we agreed to utilize the ground rules. What we have done is designate our team members in writing for you, which show the negotiating team members and the alternates. The names are listed, but the titles aren't, so that's
Oh.
what you got right here. This is the original that I'm giving to you, hand delivering, and these are copies for your team.
And was I supposed to do that too? Was I supposed to give you written?
Yeah, well, it's just, you know, that's something that we just did in order to designate who the negotiating team is for purposes of the ground rules and the contract. And I was gonna request that you do the same,
Okay.
just so that it's solidified and memorialized in writing. One of the other things that I have in this deal is a request that any and all communications with regard to the collective bargaining negotiations between the city and the fire union, and the negotiation sessions will be solely between the lead negotiators.
All requests for information?
All requests for information, all questions, that way it's not like everyone, you know, it kind of just organizes, what we're doing here. And that way we're kind of all not talking at the same time, things like that. Even outside the negotiations, if there's a question that comes up, I request that, instead of, you know, a team member approaching me, that they approach you, and you and I talk about it, so that we have, so it's all consistent, it's all, you know, there's no miscommunication and misunderstandings, and it just kind of organizes it a little bit. Okay?
Okay.
So, I ask that you do that. I mean, it's not required on the first day, but I do ask that,
Well, if
we
you're
get
talking
something
about
like that.
discussions at the table, I mean, my sort of rule, and I've done a lot of these negotiations, is my guys can talk whenever they want. However, you'll hear from me about 95% of the time. It's just that they have some information that I don't have, or,
Oh, right.
you know, things like that. It facilitates it that we don't wait till the next break and I find out what I said was wrong. So they, you know, anytime they feel strongly about something, they may say something, but I don't expect that to happen.
I agree with that, and I'm not in any way trying to limit that at all, because I expect that's, you know, that's what we're gonna be doing on our side. I think this is mostly for things that may happen when the negotiations are closed outside of the actual session, if there's questions that come up or things like that, that you and I are the ones that communicate
Okey-doke.
through those, so, okay. Can I get, we have some new members of our team,
Okay.
new members that have been added to our team. So, for their benefit, I would also ask that each of your members identify themselves, their position.
Okay,
and-
sure. And we have one guy that's
You're all here.
No,
Oh,
we're all here, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and yeah, I apologize. Eddie Houlihan is actually on the main team. He's listed on my letter. He's the Assistant Director of Budget, Management and Budget. He was unavailable today, so that's why Steve is an alternate and he's sitting in his place right now.
Okay.
Whenever we have a member of the core team that is unable to attend, we will always have an alternate to sit in their place.
Okay.
Let's start with the introductions on our side. Brendan.
Brendan Pierce, firefighter 2, paramedic.
Randy Smart, firefighter 2, EMS, paramedic.
Johnny Stobbs, fire captain.
Craig Dietz.
Steve Bowers, firefighter 2, paramedic.
John Water, firefighter 2.
Frank Silva, firefighter 2 engineer.
Scott Moreland, captain.
And I'll get you those names in writing. That the team, it's my understanding, do we have any alternates back here?
We do.
Justin Miller, alternate firefighter 2, paramedic.
Carlos Torres, Association President.
Spectator.
Ryan Easter's gonna be helping us with the AV equipment.
Okay.
More than a spectator.
Firefighter 2.
Is he a firefighter as well?
Yes,
Firefighter.
yeah.
What was his name?
Ryan Easter.
Okay. All right, as we know, we're all here pursuant to our Rule 11 agreement. If anybody needs extra copies, I have some. Due to that Rule 11 agreement, we've also agreed to the ground rules as long as they are, if they're inconsistent with the Rule 11 agreement, the Rule 11 agreement is what supersedes.
Right.
And I have copies of that if anybody would like to have that.
Of the original
Of the-
ground rules or the
yes,
Rule 11?
The original ground rules.
Sure, I'll take a copy.
I think the rest of us have it.
Yeah, I do too, I think, but you can't have too many.
Yeah. And I'll have copies available if we need those.
Anybody else need one? Okay.
At this time, I was gonna ask if there were any questions on the ground rules, or if you just wanna talk, questions arise throughout the, negotiations that we just addressed them at that point.
Yeah, that's the way I'd like to do it.
Okay. One of the things that we have in the ground rules is that we're videotaping the minutes. I think each side is doing that. One of the things I wanted to advise you of, or talk about it, is what we have done, because we're a municipality and we're subject to the Open Records Act, the Open Records Act, et cetera. What we have done is post unedited minutes and video of the negotiation sessions, after they happen. What we have also done in order to help facilitate people to understand what's happening in those minutes is post a copy of any document that has been exchanged and discussed at the negotiating table, and that of course is also done after the fact, just
Okay.
so as a reference. We intend to continue to do that, and if there's any issues, I would like for you to let me know if you have any concerns, but that's what we intend to do, and we wanted to let you know, and if there's any concerns or any questions, now's the time to discuss it.
Well, just as a point of personal privilege, if I say anything stupid, I want that edited out.
Okay, I'll talk to you about that, yeah. And we didn't get hair and makeup in here or anything like that, so. Okay. Remember that. Okay, at this point, the Corpus Christi Professional Firefighters Union has requested collective bargaining with the City of Corpus Christi on certain issues, including issues that affect the budget, and I'm asking to see if you have any proposals prepared to, talk about today?
We do.
Okay.
Um, we do have a lot. Let me just, by way of introduction, I know a lot of y'all don't know me or you meet me for the first time. And I kind of feel like, I don't know if you've ever seen the old Godfather movie, but I kind of feel like, the meeting of the five families here. How did we get to this point? Y'all made it real clear that you want, sort of a fresh start, look at every aspect of the contract. So that's what I have done. And what I'm going to send you electronically and what I'm handing you, and I think there are 8 copies of each, are 18 articles that I would say cover about 60% of the contract. I'm also going to send you electronically, Roxy, a copy of what I call a status sheet. And all it is a list of the articles that I think are going to be in our contract proposals.
Okay.
In keeping with the old ground
Sorry,
rules.
you're all.
They're all, it's just this one copy?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
there are 18 separate things, and so just everybody take. I'm sorry about we just didn't quite have time to get it organized, but
No, I understand.
Excuse me, Craig, there's 8 copies of every article.
Oh, in each,
Yeah.
in each one, okay,
Yeah.
I'll hand those out.
Okay. And I know we're going to have a 2-week break after today where, it doesn't count against our 60-day bargaining period. And I'm going to be trying during that 2-week period to get proposals on the remainder of the topics. And what I'm hoping to do is to cover everything that was in the prior contract, everything that was in your prior proposals, everything that was in my prior proposals, the association's prior proposals, which is not to say obviously that I'm going to put your proposals in our proposals, but I'm going to try and respond to them as best I can. And where I can incorporate them, I'm going to do that too. These first proposals that I'm giving you are more or less in black, and some of them I've had time in brackets to indicate the sources of the thing. I have modified the language, and I have pulled things together that, for example, sick leave is one that sticks out in my mind because I did that one pretty recently. I found like 4 separate places in the contract that deal with sick leave. And it's just because you started with a document, and you built on it over time. And so it's like you start out with a 1-room house and you add as you go along. Things get, why is the bathroom over here? Well, who knows? So that's what I'm trying to do. Future proposals, what I'll do is I'll do it in like legislative format, additions to the language of your proposal in blue and underlined, red strike through where we struck through language, and that way you'll be able to see kind of quickly, and we'll kind of winnow down hopefully to the real points of contention. But you won't see word for word language in the proposals, and the reason for that is because quite frankly, sometimes the language used is confusing.
Yeah.
and way wordy for what is the idea that's trying to be conveyed. So it's never a sneaky attempt to try and change something on you. I mean, we'll fully talk about, and I'm prepared to fully talk about every proposal and why the language is what it is, and to try and tell you where the differences are. And in fact, in the wage proposal, which I think is Article 10, what I've done is I have put in black in Roxy, I don't know if the colors came through on those copies, but the ones I'm going to send you electronically, they will.
Okay.
And so that you can kind of see, where the wages differ from what the current wage package is. And just by way of further introduction, we're all going to get very frustrated with each other from time to time. Let's just keep, we're going to get discouraged at times, and we're going to think we have mountains that we can't climb in front of us perhaps. Let's just keep working through it, keep pushing through. Somehow, with limited exceptions, we almost always end up with a contract. And that's the goal here, and I've talked to Roxy a lot, and I know that's the goal from your side too. It needs to be fair to both sides, and both sides need to have their issues heard, and that's the goal. So that's kind of my opening spiel.
Okay, thank you, Craig. I mirror your, the objective is getting to a contract. This is a very unique opportunity that we have in order to make the contract work for both of us. The way the contract had been put together was very confusing because it'd been cut and paste, it was a result of, grievances, settlements, other issues that may have come up back from the 1970s when, like Craig said, when you put it together, there were things that were addressed in different parts and it just wasn't organized correctly. It's hard to read. It's like putting together an 80s stereo system kind of deal. So what we do, I appreciate, thank you for giving us these proposals that we will go through today. In terms of organization, I know that you listed them in an article, but please leave open the possibility to, once we make agreements, that you and I sit down at the end and kind of organize it in a way that flows and makes sense.
It makes sense, yeah. I tried to do that initially, but I know that you will have ideas too.
Right.
And I'm certainly willing to consider all those. And if we have other issues that I haven't put articles for, we can certainly do that too. Let's just add them on at the end right now.
Okay.
But at the end, we'll organize them in an order that makes sense. We just got to make sure, for example, some of the articles interrelate. The sick leave and the buyback interrelate a little bit, and to the extent they refer to each other, we just got to make sure at the end that we
Okay.
get those references correct.
Right, and I know that we do have a little bit more than a week of time that we are not going to be doing, that doesn't count towards the bargaining period, but we are going to utilize that time in order to get the information that we need and get the information that you need. And Craig and I have been working on that. We're here to cooperate, because we know that we have information that you need and you have information that we need. We need to understand the basis and the reasoning for the proposals, so that we can explain to the people that we need to get authority from, this is where they're coming from, this is what the basis is. So I anticipate most of the day today we're probably going to be talking through your articles. We do have a couple of proposals, but they're bits and pieces, so what I would like to do is go through here and see if it matches some of the stuff that we have prepared, and see if we can, at least on those little pieces, come up with tentative agreements so that we can at least start building upon that. And that way, like Craig said, this is going to be tedious. This is a big job that we all have to deal with. We're here because we want a contract. I think we're gonna get there. It's gonna take a lot of work and a lot of, sweat and blood and, whatever it takes. But you have to remember, like in any negotiation, it's gonna be a give and take. Both parties, at the end of a successful negotiation with a contract, both parties are going to be upset because they had to give up something, but that's good. That's a successful mediation. That means that there was actual give and take. So that's what we're here to do. We're here to negotiate. We want to talk through these things. And I guess what we can do, you said that you're prepared to start talking through some of these? Okay.
I assume y'all will want to caucus and just kind of look at them, and then come back in and we can go through them one by one if you want to, and talk about any questions or concerns.
Yeah, and I was gonna give you the proposals that we have, but they're bits and pieces. What I wanna go and review these. If there's something that mirrors what we're gonna do, then we can probably already agree to it. So let me go, we'll caucus, we'll go through this, we'll come back with questions and information. If there's any information or questions that you have, or information that you need that at this time, just go ahead and compile that, and you can either email it to me, and we can read it so that it's on the record.
Okay.
And we will start working on getting that.
Okay, and all of those proposals I just sent you by email in Word.
Okay.
So
Let me see.
you should have them, and also the status sheet that I talked about.
Yes, okay. We'll do that. Craig, I know that before we started this, that we were trying to at least gather some information that you needed, and you had asked about how Kelly days are designated, or how they're
I've
given-
talked to my team. I think I pretty much know how
Okay.
Kelly days are done, but it is once a quarter. And
Okay, so if you had any more questions on that, we have Richie, who's here from the fire department, that can help you get that information that you need. And at this time, I guess we're gonna ask that we caucus at least. Because this is a lot of articles, at least.
It is, and I think a lot of our work will be done in the caucus rooms. I mean, that's the way it usually is, but.
Right, okay, so it'd probably be at least for an hour. I'll come and let you know at the end of the hour where we're at and what we're gonna do, and we'll start working from there.
Great.
Okay, if we can at least start talking about at least some of the articles, so that we at least start making some movement on some articles, we'll probably do that so that we can try to accomplish something by the end of the day.
That's good, and let me just say this, you know, I said that while we're on this break, I'm gonna try and get more articles done. It might help speed the process if I could send those to you electronically in advance. I don't want to violate the Open Meetings Act, and so is that a no-no, or?
Well,
I mean, if I provide them to you at the Open Meetings Act, you know, I mean.
I have to look at that issue, because if it's something that you provide to me and then maybe we post on the website, because it's something that you're gonna give at the, I need to look at that issue, but that would be really great if we could make it, we would
Yeah,
make this
I
a
mean,
lot
I
more
could send you
efficient.
more proposals next week, so that, you know, you're not hit with a wad of
So
paper
at least
like
we're
that.
we're prepared.
Yeah.
Um,
And also, have we agreed to like do paper copies, is that the?
You know, we probably need to talk about that.
Because, I mean, I'm all about saving trees, I don't mind doing electronic.
I am too, and I have this little printer that just, you know, works too hard sometimes. But
Yeah.
it's a little portable printer. But I work on all my stuff electronically. For the benefit of your team members, I don't mind making a couple of copies, but what I can do is if I have flash drives that I can use, that I usually, if we need to exchange something right here and there, I have a flash drive, or I can email it since we have Wi-Fi. So whatever you want to do to make it most efficient. I
Okay.
can provide copies to my team very easily.
I'll talk to the guys
Okay.
during the break and try and figure that out.
And then we also need to talk about, make sure that we're consistent with the legislative changes, the red lines that we do. You
Mhm.
said that any additions that you do you usually do the tracking on Word?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And then
exactly.
you, anything that you add is blue and underlined, anything deleted is red?
Red.
And struck through?
Although sometimes when I send it to other people's computers, the colors don't always.
Yeah, the colors
I've got a
change.
Mac, and if you're using a PC or something, it may not come, the colors that I put in may not come out on your computer.
Okay. Do you have Word on Mac?
Yeah, I do.
Because I think I may have a Mac available to me, I just need to get I have the iWork, I don't have the Word, I need to
Okay.
get the Word. So I'll see if I can make that happen.
Okay.
Okay.
But yeah, tell me how it comes out on your computer. Of course, there really is very little red and blue in there right now, but there will be, I'm sure, more and more as the.
Now, when we're reviewing this is all just new language, it doesn't show, if you pulled it from the contract, it may have it, in the parentheses under the article.
What I've done is, and I haven't done it for all of them because I just kind of ran out of time and I wanted to get as much done as possible. But for a lot of them, you'll see in brackets, you know, like the part of the CBA or the city proposal number or the union proposal number.
Oh, okay.
That's involved.
Okay.
And then I got a little stymied because I didn't realize, I didn't have copies of all the city responses to the union proposals. I do have that now in this second book here, but so some of that may not be incorporated, but you know, we'll get it done.
Okay. And if
But
you-
anything that you say, well, where the heck did that come from? Just tell me and I'll be able to find it,
Okay.
hopefully.
And if you need all the stuff electronically, I believe that I have all proposals from both sides that were put on the table electronically.
I think I got them now.
Okay.
Because Johnny sent them to me, so.
Okay. Very good. Okay, we'll caucus for at least an hour. I'll let you know at the end of the hour where we're at, and
Okay.
we're gonna go through these and look at
Clarify what we're talking about in terms of what's going to be posted on the city's website. My understanding was that you're going to post the actual bargaining sessions themselves, post the proposals that we make, and your counter proposals.
Right.
What I'm really hopeful, and what you and I talked about on the break, is that we won't post anything at all other than that. In other words, no interpretations of proposals. And specifically, I'm thinking about something like the thing that the city posted last time, that, you know, well, the union's proposals will cost $31 million. You know, and we disagreed with that, and we went back and forth. And to avoid going down that rabbit hole again, which where we were, you know, if we can just limit it to the proposals going back and forth, the TAs, and the actual tapes of the meetings. Because if you post something and say, well, we interpret the union's proposals to cost the city an additional 31 million, then we feel like we got to give you something across the table that says, no, the city's full of bull, it only costs X, you know.
Okay,
and we're
I
right
understand.
back to everybody playing to the crowd,
Right.
which is what I understand we want to avoid.
Right, and for right now, we will agree to just post the proposals and the counter proposals and the unedited videotapes, with the exception of where you asked to be edited. And if
Judge instruct the jury to disregard my last remark.
right. But as a point of clarification, I think that the part that you were talking about, and I did check the website, it's up and running, all the stuff is, every single thing that was posted before is
Still up.
Still up, so I don't know if it was a glitch or what was going on, but they're at different, I guess I don't know if they're different tabs or so forth. But we checked that. But at any rate, a point of clarification is that what we were doing is, because these meetings are subject to the Open Meetings Act, and anything and everything that's discussed and exchanged here at the table is subject to, you know, it's public document, it's subject to, the public can come and look at it. What we were doing was we were not only posting the unedited videos, but we were posting the documents that were exchanged. The $31 million cost document that you were talking about was a document that was requested by the union and prepared by our budget people at the union's request, and we presented it at the table, and we had actually very long discussion about it. We walked through it, we discussed it, we argued about it. There was, you know, there was questions asked. It was something that was thoroughly vetted and discussed, and there was no limitation from the fire union being able to provide anything, you know, a response to that, et cetera. But I understand what you're talking about, and we're more than willing to do that right now. If we, what we will do is post the proposals, counter proposals, and the videos. Of course, if there's any other document exchanged, we will talk about it, whether, if there's a reason to post them, we will do that. Of course, if they're requested by the, you know, subject to open records request, we're required to give those out. But we will, if an issue comes up or something comes up like that, we'll discuss it before anything is done.
Yeah.
Okay?
You know, and I appreciate that, and I accept that. You know, I mean, the concern that I think the guys had last time was that in addition to posting that document, there was another line under it that said, this will cause us to raise your taxes X amount. That I think was on there as late as today.
Okay.
And so what I would ask as a show of good faith is just these are the 2015 negotiations, and
That's right.
we're starting over again, so let's pull down the 2014. We're not violating the Open Meetings Act by doing that. Certainly we've revised our proposals. For example, one that you costed very heavily was the minimum staffing proposal that we're not going to make. So it wouldn't be an accurate reflection of what we're doing now anyway. So what I would suggest is that we just pull down the 2014 stuff, start over the 2015, we post, you know, the videos, the proposals going back and forth, and then we talk about anything else that we post before we post it.
Okay.
Okay? I you know, because I'm just trying to get everybody's focus, your team, my team, on what's
That's right.
happening here.
And we both agree on what the focus is. In fact, that's why we're sitting here today. We're starting brand new negotiations. We're starting fresh. We will agree at this point to pull that down and put up the 2015 so that we reflect what is going on here and now today. We will of course be referencing, you know, like we have, you've referenced them in your proposals that were made previously, but we'll discuss them fresh here.
Right.
If the public has any questions, we'd be happy to provide those former proposals pursuant to open records requests where they're available.
And obviously, you've got I understand your legal obligation.
Right.
We're not asking you to violate the Open Meetings Act. You know, if somebody asks for it, they get it. You know, by the same token, if they don't ask for it, you know, they can still come down here and hear everything. And
Right. On that same issue, it did come to my attention that there was that the association's public website had changed, and there was a posting of a billboard that was a point of contention during the last negotiations. And I would ask in the same respect that because we're here to focus on getting to the contract and not really, we need to focus on the facts that we're dealing with here today, and take out, trying to influence something publicly, et cetera, that, we ask it in the same respect as we're gonna go ahead and start and take down right now the 2014 tab, et cetera, and focus on the 2015 negotiations. So what we're doing here today, we ask that the same courtesy be extended on the fire union's end.
And I'll be glad to talk to my team about that. I don't have any, I think you're talking about the Become a Hero
Yes.
campaign thing that's on the union website.
Yeah, well, and it's a specific billboard.
Is it still up on the billboard?
I don't know if it's actually up on the billboard, but a picture of the billboard that was put up, there's a very big picture on the union
Website. Okay, we'll look at that during the next break. It just, it raises all these issues. I know that y'all, on the eve of the last negotiation, you published a study by MGT about whether or not Station 18 was needed. I think we've already agreed that Station 18 and the building of Station 18 is not going to be a topic in these negotiations. And so, the Become a Hero campaign and the MGT study, which were both directed at that, don't seem to be germane, but maybe we could agree to pull them both down.
Okay.
So, okay, let's just talk during the break and then we'll.
Okay, and our objective is I just want to focus with the issue at hand. I would really like to make these 60 days count and end with the fair and equitable contract.
I think we both agree that we
Okay.
want the minimum distractions possible.
Absolutely. Okay. I appreciate you giving us all these proposals. We're able to, I think we're going to be able to work quickly. Well, it's a lot of information. We went through what we could with the time that we had, because I at least wanted to start asking questions on certain proposals, try to start getting into this. We will, once we start going through these, we will of course prepare our counter proposals and proposals to you. I may even have some proposals that I can present today if we can get through at least a lot of the questions I have today.
Okay.
We got proposals of Articles 1 through 12 and then 15 through 18. We didn't get a 13 and a 14.
You didn't, I haven't done those yet.
Okay, I just
You-
wanted
You
to
know
make
what they're
sure.
gonna be, because I show what they're gonna be on the status sheet.
Okay.
And they relate to other supplemental benefits, like the uniform allowance would be an example, and 13 is health insurance.
Okay.
And so hope those are coming, but
Okay, I just want to make sure that I wasn't missing something, and if we were, that way we could obtain it.
and just while we're talking about preliminary matters, I'm the newest person to this process, and I realize that. But one thing that's become very clear to me is that both sides have a lot of genuine interest with regards to the whole EMS staffing question.
Okay.
And both of you had some fairly elaborate proposals. And there's something, I know my guys have had this training before, and I assume some city members have too, so-called interest-based bargaining. I'm wondering if it wouldn't be a good idea for us to appoint a subcommittee composed of a couple members of our group, maybe three members of your group, convene that group in between negotiating sessions. I don't think that's subject to open meetings because it's less than a quorum. But convene them and just have them, identify what are the issues that we need to address with the new EMS proposal. Because, we're over in our room talking about it already. I'm having trouble just getting my head around it. I do understand that there are a host of issues that really relate to the fact that your whole EMS system has kind of grown and morphed over the last several years. And I understand your legitimate interest in being able to staff the ambulances, and we have a legitimate interest in, the rules not changing, too drastic for people that came in under a certain set of understanding. So
That's right.
it seems to me that this is one where the two sides working cooperatively could at least identify the interest so that we can start maybe jointly putting together an EMS article.
Okay.
That's just a thought.
That's a good thought that we can build on. I don't have the authority at this point to agree
Yeah.
to that, but it's something that we will definitely consider, and I think that something that may be viable. So what I will have to do is take that recommendation, back. I need to analyze it, talk to the people that we get our authority from.
Yeah, it still gets
and-
bargained here at the table. It's just
Right.
that they come in and say, okay, here's the city's interest, here's the union's interest, how do we
Right.
build a bridge?
And that's gonna be one of the big, articles or proposals that we're gonna have to hash through, because there is a lot of data that we're gonna have to comb through and understand a lot, some of it's raw data, some of it's in forms of, standardized reports that are done through the national, I forget what it's called. But, there's gonna be a lot of information that we're gonna need to exchange, make sure that everybody is on the same page, so no one's missing anything. But I agree, the emergency medical response portion or the response calls of the fire department have greatly, increased to overtake a lot of the resources and the time and the employees, having to do that. I think it's almost 80% of the volume call. At
Yeah,
this point.
and
So-
surprisingly, it's not only 80% of the volume call, but if I understand my facts correctly, and again, I'm the newest to this, it's not only taking a great amount of your ambulance time, it's taking a great amount of your time of your fire engine
Yes.
and truck time.
Yes.
That those fire engines and trucks, in fact, are responding to probably 75% of the medical calls. And the ones they're not making are the more the transport times. So that, medical calls, and I think this is a nationwide trend, medical calls are consuming more and more of fire department's times.
Right, so, and I agree, and of course, this is my general understanding, we'll let the data speak for itself once we start exchanging it. If in preparing any proposal that you have any questions come up, just email me and outline what information you're looking for, and I'll do my best to get that to you quickly and efficiently. In terms of, I know that we as a city have all the reports, et cetera. There may be information that I don't have from people who are actually in the field. I'm not the one who does the work, and I'm not the one who has insight into that, so that's something that's gonna be very important in trying to figure out how are we gonna make this work for the city as well as the firefighters themselves. We wanna make sure everybody is safe, we wanna make sure that the work is equitable amongst everybody, that not a small portion of the firefighters are doing a larger portion of the work, et cetera. Our interest is to, we have a really high quality service that we provide to the citizens, we know that, but we want to be able to always improve, there's always room for improvement, there's always room to be, better than the best we already are. And, so that's what we're striving towards, and I think that the committee, idea is something that we will definitely consider, and we'll be able to talk about it more and, see what kind of deal that we can come up with in terms of forming the committee in the next session, which I believe is scheduled for February 5th, 2015.
Yep.
And on that note, I need to make sure, I think that this is gonna be the same facility we're gonna be using. We're gonna work on that so that, confirming that so that we can go ahead and publicly post like we need to. I'll try to have the classrooms identified. This last time we didn't get.
Yeah, this is a great facility.
This
so.
is a great facility, but we're still working through some logistical issues with regard to price and time and things like that. So we're hoping, I'm very optimistic it's gonna work out. I think that this facility has served well for us. I'm hoping for you, if there's any concerns, just let me know. And so I'm glad that we're here.
Okay.
Let me see, I had another, what was the other issue? Okay, so committee on EMS staffing questions. Okay, we're gonna start going through the articles one by one, and we have some specific questions. What I anticipate doing is getting our questions answered, and then some of these we may need to take back and see if we can do a counter proposal, et cetera.
Okay.
So
And you got them electronically as well?
I have them electronically as well as the list. So most of the afternoon, I think, because there's quite a bit of them, I'm gonna try and get it through as many of these as I can with regard to questions.
Okay.
Before we end, I do have some proposals that I would like some smaller proposals that I would like to present to you, so at least you can have them.
Okay.
Oh, I know what the other issue I needed to talk about before I start getting into the questions. You had asked whether it was, okay and within the Open Meetings Act, whether we could exchange,
Yeah.
proposals electronically. Our preliminary legal research and analysis shows that that is probably okay, as long as we bring them and we present them at the actual meeting, we discuss them, and there's no action taken until we discuss them at the table. So I just need to confirm that if that's the case, I think that will make the process more efficient, and we won't be spinning our wheels here at the table kind of dealing with that. So, you know, we'll have better time to prepare.
Okay.
So I think let's go ahead and work on that, and then we'll just have to represent them at the next meeting. Okay, with number 1, we had a question, let's see, on section 2 of the intent of the agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We know where it says that this agreement would cover fair and equitable wages, hours, and other conditions of
In conformance
in
with.
conformance with the chapter 174.021, and that basically is reiterated there. The question that we had is, what does orderly adjustment mean, or what is that intended to mean? And
Grievances, you know, are gonna be defined in the grievance procedure
Right.
as being questions about the interpretation and application of the agreement.
right,
So, you know, the orderly adjustment of grievances really means using the grievance procedure. The orderly adjustment of disciplinary appeals means using the, under your contract, separate disciplinary appeal procedure.
okay. Okay, so that answers that question. So whatever disciplinary procedure would be in the contract.
Yeah, and I think they are in the, you know, it's in the contract now. I think
Right.
what it does is it references you back to the statutory procedure. And that may be what ultimately we wanted. Oh, well, no, it does more than that, doesn't it?
Yeah, I
So-
think the individual disciplinary appeals at this point are subject to a private arbitration, just like a grievance.
Yeah, and I haven't talked to my team about it yet, so I'm not gonna,
Okay,
you know, tell you that it's gonna, you know, the proposal will be to leave it unchanged, but that
Okay.
may be the proposal.
on the preamble, this is one of the ones that I would like to at least hold off on until, because if we are gonna deal with the disciplinary appeals in the contract, then yes, I agree that this should be included in the preamble. If for some reason it's not, and it's just we rely on the statute, then maybe that's something we would need to
Okay.
leave out. So, Article 1, I would like to table until we get to
Okay.
the issue of the grievance procedure. Obviously will need to be outlined in the contract. On Article number 2, we do agree that definitions need to be included in the contract. One of the things we need to point out is our fiscal year has changed recently. The fiscal year is now from October 1 through September 30th. It shifted from, it used to be August 1 to July 31st.
And now it's gonna, yeah, and I guess you just got a 14-month fiscal year this year.
Yeah, we had a transitional fiscal year because of that, to bridge the gap between July 31st and October 1.
Yeah, and I don't mind reflecting that in the definition. What I'd said was that the city can alter the fiscal year and would notify us in advance and give us
Sure.
a chance to talk about any adverse
Okay.
effects.
So that was the only thing that we saw at this point. I think, you
Can
know.
I suggest, you know, I wouldn't want to even try to TA this. I mean, let's go through the whole contract.
That's
There may be
exactly where I was
definitions we
going.
want to add, some that we want to, you know, there's some that are in your current contract that are not in here. And the
Right.
reason is because in a lot of my proposals, you know, a lot of those definitions only refer to 1 or 2 articles. So just to make the document more user-friendly, define them within that article.
Oh, okay.
okay?
I understand.
And these definitions are more the ones that are just used throughout the whole
Throughout the
agreement.
whole, okay. There may be a couple that we would like in here. I remember like last time, and we'll provide you with the counter proposal. One of them was full duty because I think that was referred to in some, in some proposals at the time. I've got to look through the proposals and see if that's something we
Yeah.
can define at this point. But my suggestion was going to be that this should be the last proposal we do before the table of contents at the end, because that we want to make sure that every definition we need is reflected.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Okay. Article 3 is regard to the recognition. The city recognizes the association as the exclusive bargaining agent for a bargaining unit consisting of all firefighters. The bargaining unit does not include the fire chief, civilian employees, or cadets. We just cross-reference this with the Chapter 174 just to make sure that it was in compliance, and this is the way it's defined in the statute anyway, and so we're fine with the way that it's written. So we can tentatively agree to this particular article.
Okay, very good.
And when we TA'd, I guess just logistically, you want to just work on the format, or how are we going to do that?
What I'd like to suggest is that once we've got a TA, I'll put it in a TA form, and somebody from your team will sign it. Whoever is the authorized person. For us, Johnny's going to sign them, and then we'll just put those in a TA folder. The way I understand TAs to work, by the way, is we set them aside, but that doesn't mean they can't be reopened.
Right.
You know, if we're negotiating other items. And sometimes, not very often, but sometimes it makes sense to do that. But
Yeah, there may be some proposals that we start negotiating and we start making movement on it, and it actually directly affects something that we TA, so we have to adjust it accordingly. So I understand that.
Right. So once you tell me it's a TA, I'll prepare a TA, send it to you to look at it, make sure it reflects what we agreed to, and then we'll sign it.
Okay, and I'll be the signer on my side as the lead negotiator. Okay, we will do that. And I'm gonna be looking for your direction on form, because you've been doing this a lot longer than I have, and I'm trying to look for an efficient way to do this.
Yeah, well, that's
And that way
fine.
we're
That's
consistent
fine.
as well. And then when we're exchanging, that way it's easy to add, delete, show what the changes are, etc.
What is 4?
Okay, 4 is duration. I have some questions on this one.
Okay.
Let's see, so the duration at this point is going to be 4 years plus, as I calculated, right? Depending on when
It's going to be a little 4 years plus.
Okay.
You know, I just took it to the end of a fiscal year,
Right.
but the idea essentially was a 4-year agreement with a 5-year evergreen. And I want to point out something else about the evergreen, because a lot of people don't think about this, is that, you know, I know that during the last negotiations, y'all made a proposal with regards to an impasse procedure that ended up with a sort of a binding impasse determination. If we're able to do that, the nature and length of the evergreen is a lot less important, because either side unilaterally can invoke the impasse procedure and then get us to a new agreement.
Okay.
So I wouldn't get too heated up about the length of the impasse. I mean, the length of the evergreen clause at this point. I would just point out that duration is something we're probably going to have to work out in conjunction with the impasse procedure. But the bigger question is, how long a contract do we want this to be? Do we want it to be a 3, a 4, or 5-year contract? And, you know, our initial thought is 4-year contract. Y'all might have a different thought about that.
Yeah, we have to, in determining what, you know, the term of the contract, we have a lot of factors that we have to consider. One of the key components is what is the economic impact of the length, you know, determining, and we'll have to negotiate that because you already have a wage proposal out there. So
Mhm.
that will be taken into consideration as well.
Yeah.
Because you remember, we, of course, as a municipality, we have to budget for every fiscal year, and we have to be able to budget accordingly with the liabilities that we incurred. We can't have any unfunded liabilities that we don't budget for, otherwise we could be in violation of the Constitution and the law. So, you know, that's something that we need to make sure that we can do. The term of the contract is gonna, like you said, is gonna be dependent on a lot of the other proposals. Once we kind of whittle those down, I think that we'll be able to capture a little bit more of the duration. I agree, we're gonna have to talk about the impasse procedure, and I believe that will affect the duration as well. Do you have a reasoning or a basis for why you chose a 5-year evergreen clause?
You know, you want to leave ample time so that you can get the successor agreement worked out. You know, if we have, like I said, if we have an effective impasse procedure that leads to a solution, then, or to a new contract, then the evergreen becomes less important. Evergreen is more important because, you know, my experience has been that, you know, more often than not, you know, and this is not just here, but lots of places, you're not able to get a new contract negotiated by the time the old one expires, despite the best efforts of the parties. There are contentious issues. And so you want to leave ample time because, you know, a gap between contracts hurts both parties. I mean, you may think of it as hurting the firefighters, but it also hurts the city because there are a lot of provisions in there where you deviate from civil service, where you'd have to immediately go back to civil service. Then it would be harmful to the city, quite frankly. Just as one example off the top of my head, out of class pay. So the idea is to give us the comfort of having a contract in place. It's a kind of a cold comfort from the firefighters' perspective because they're not getting any pay raises during an evergreen period. And, you know, they're like every other employee, they like those pay raises. So, but it does provide continuity, and that's why we want an evergreen.
Okay.
We agree that a perpetual evergreen probably doesn't make a lot of sense in Corpus Christi.
Okay, on article number 5, this is the non-discrimination article. Number 1 with the associate membership, and then section 2 with the protected status. One of the things that we looked at in analyzing and looking at evaluating this article was making sure it was in compliance with the general city policy for all other city employees, and it was in line with it. So this is one of it's consistent with the city policy, and so after reviewing this, we're able to tentatively agree to this particular article.
Okay, I do want to point out there is a typo in section 1.
Okay.
It says that oh wait. No. You see, it says neither the city nor the association will discriminate. So that works.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, okay, great. We'll TA on 5.
Yeah, because this puts a just anti-discrimination on both the city and the union as we understand it.
Right,
And that's
right.
the intent, correct?
And yeah,
Right.
and obviously, I mean, there are state statutes that do the same thing. For most of them, sexual orientation is probably not one by statute, but I think the court climate is such that there's being constitutional protection recognized. So.
That's right, and it is actually recognized in our city policy as well, sexual
Okay.
orientation, so we're very good with keeping that. So we'll tentatively agree to the article number 5.
Okay.
Okay, on article number 6. Article number 6 is with regard to management rights.
Mhm.
When we're talking about the first part of the sentence, I think it's just one sentence, but the first part of the sentence, when you're saying except as modified by the terms of this agreement, is the intent on that just to abide by the terms of the agreement and not provide any other limitations other than what the what the proposals agreed to call for?
This agreement or, statutes or charter provisions, okay? Except as modified by this agreement means, for example, hiring. You have a hiring procedure that allows you to not use the civil service procedure. So because the agreement modifies hiring, you would be governed
Okay.
by the agreement. But I don't want to sell you a pig in a poke. There is case law out there that says if you have something that's controlled by the Civil Service Act and the contract modifies it, the contract doesn't entirely preempt the Civil Service Act provision. It preempts those portions of the Civil Service Act that it's in conflict with.
Right.
So what this sentence simply says is you retain all the rights that you have to management except as affected by statutes and the terms of this agreement.
Okay, so basically what I'm asking is, are there any hidden limitations in it that wouldn't be outlined in the agreement? And for instance, one of the big ones would be, wages. If we didn't have a contract, we had the ability to authorize, wages accordingly.
Wages is a
to
perfect
the-
example.
right.
I mean,
We can't unilaterally change them if we have them pursuant to a contract.
right,
And
but
that's
in
part
the
of-
absence of a contract, the city council does have the authority to set
Right.
wages in its budgetary process.
Right,
So, certainly that's a management right that the city has. If it's not affected by the agreement or by statute, then you still have that right.
okay.
And that would pertain to any type of right you have, the right to set schedules, the right to impose discipline. A lot of those things are already affected by statute.
Right.
Some of them will be affected by this agreement, but to the extent that they're not affected by either, they remain in place.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna go ahead, we're gonna talk a little bit further about this amongst my
Okay.
group, and we'll probably bring it back for discussion at the next session.
Okay.
Okay? Okay, next is Article 7. This is entitled Employee Rights, and it has 4 sections.
Mm-hmm.
I have questions about each section, okay? Section 1 is what used to be the prevailing rights section
Right.
of the last contract, and it's called maintenance of standards. This is, the prevailing rights section from the last contract has been the basis of numerous grievances in terms of policy changes and management decisions that have been made pursuant to the fire department. As you're proposing this, what does this really mean? What do you intend it to mean? What does the fire union understand this to be?
Okay. It's a good question.
And if you don't have the answer right now,
I-
that's the question we're posing.
I've always got an answer. My answer changes from day to day, but I've always got one.
That's right.
I was looking to see if, in the private sector, the law has always been absent contractual modification. If you make midterm changes in employment conditions that are mandatory conditions of bargaining, that you got an obligation to bargain with the union before implementing those changes.
Right.
This is SART, and the case on that is Katz versus something or other, Jacobs, maybe, I don't know. But,
I remember it's cats because it always makes me hungry when I read it.
so, like Katz's Deli.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. This is an attempt, and you see this in a lot of contracts around the state. It's an attempt to capture that. It's hard to capture all the working conditions that may need protection in a single document that's gonna end up being about 50 or 60 pages. And that's what it's designed to do. I mean, you know, just to use a silly example, you know, you probably have a TV in every fire station. And we say, well, you know, we don't want to have to put a provision about TVs in the contract, but we want the TVs to stay in the stations, you know. And so, you know, this would protect that. Don't take the TVs out of the stations without coming to us and talking to us about it first.
Okay. I think what the main question what I'm really trying to get at is how does this impact the management rights? Because if you take the example of the TV, and it's not included in the contract, it wasn't a negotiated working condition, et cetera, or, you know, condition of employment. I mean, I guess y'all could request a TV for everyone who was hired, but.
And their attorney.
But if you think about it, say that the fire department was in a budget crunch, and one of the TVs happened to go out, and for some reason, you know, at that point in time, there just wasn't enough money to replace the TV for at that time, you know, for a period of time.
Yeah.
What this has done in the past is that this has opened up the ability for somebody, and that's a management decision. My money is going to be better well spent on spending it on something else, you know, whether it be, you know, an overtime or, you know, some other expense that isn't, that you don't account for, you know, something that comes up, or, you know, some equipment breaks, you need to go fix that. You know, that money is better spent doing that rather than replacing a TV in a fire station. Yet with this, you know, with this prevailing right provision, as it had been before, it opens it up to the ability for whoever wants to complain to file a grievance that costs money to defend. Even though it may be a management right, and even though one of the proposals that we talked about over here, which one was it? Article 6 says we're entitled to maintain our management rights pursuant to, you know, to statutes and all, you know, statutes and whatever we do to the agreement. That's one of the obstacles that we have encountered, is that any kind of management decision that was made, whether it be, hey, do we replace this TV, can we replace this TV right now, or you know, can I fix a policy in a certain way, you know, that isn't covered by a mandatory subject to bargaining or isn't covered by something in the contract. We have found a grievance filed against it, and we've had to defend it, and all the way to an arbitration, which costs money for both sides. And
yeah, I understand. You know, and what I would say about that is this. You know, management rights and maintenance of standards, and I'm more familiar with maintenance of standards. I've seen it referred to as prevailing rights. But they're opposite sides of the same coin, and there's always a tension between the two. But that doesn't mean you just want to throw out the one or the other. Properly understood and properly used, a maintenance of standards clause should only be used to protect important things. You know, in other words, you know, things that are important and make a real difference to firefighters in their working lives. That's why I said the TV was a silly example.
right.
You know, because it's not that important, and obviously you should have the right to make a decision. We can't repair the TV right now because we really got to repair the fire truck, and we understand that. But by the same token, if you have something, let's say that it's not in the contract, but you've always provided a year-end $500 bonus to every employee, and employees have come to depend on that, you know, because that's their Christmas shopping money or whatever, you know, that if you suddenly just scoop that up and take it away, you know, then they're left floundering. Those are the situations where I see a maintenance of standards as being viable. The devil's in the details, you know. In other words, if we were to look at the situations in which maintenance standards grievances have been filed, and where the union has felt like a need to protect something with maintenance standards, maybe we would get an idea and we can more fully draw that line. For example, I think that sometimes there are exigent circumstances where you know, you do need to have some flexibility. To use another example that might actually come into play with Corpus, usually a firefighter on a 40-hour is guaranteed 2 straight days off, every week. But you have a hurricane, and you can't really, you shouldn't get a maintenance of standards grievance because you had to tell a firefighter you can't have, even if it's in the contract, So I'm coming up with examples that are easy to see. The devil is in the details, and we need to work this out in the context of actual situations. But the idea is to arrive at a thing where management has the flexibility it needs to manage, where the union has the ability to protect things that may not be in the black letter of the contract, but nonetheless are very important to firefighters. Because, it could be a long old negotiation if we have to sit here and try and identify every single thing of importance to us that we want to get in the contract, and then we have to argue about it. So, but there's a rule of reason in everything. I think your grievance procedure, a lot of them do, and I think your grievance procedure has a provision, and if it doesn't, maybe we could add one, where the parties have, when a grievance is filed, there's a period where they discuss the grievance and try to informally resolve it before they go down the formal resolution road. That's a good thing to have, because if you do something that they feel affects their maintenance of standards right, at the same time you feel it's very essential to your management rights, that's where interest-based bargaining negotiation is at its best. What are our legitimate concerns? What are yours? Let's try and find a happy medium. So I understand that maintenance of standards, management rights is a tough nut to crack, but I think it can be done. We certainly have done that in other areas, and the solution has not been to throw out either management rights or maintenance of standards, entirely.
Okay.
That just takes us through section 1.
Yeah, that's just section 1. Yeah, and I hope you appreciate that we are asking these questions, so we really want to understand what this means, so that we can come to an understanding. We know what your intent is, what our intent is. We want to make the language plain and simple, that way there's no confusion, no room for being ambiguous, etc. So we will be asking a lot of questions. I hope you will be doing the same of us whenever we submit our proposals. Okay, section 2 is just a reiteration of what was already in the last contract. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
and there really wasn't any intent to change what's in the contract.
Okay.
I think, I see that it refers to 2 sections, and the only thing I can tell you is I probably just tried to simplify the language.
Okay.
The same I would say with section 3, that simply is a reiteration of a right that is already in the contract.
I do have a question about section 3 because I want to know how it would affect outside employment of firefighters while they're off duty. There is a city policy, and I believe it's fire department policy right now as well, that you have to get approval for off duty or for other work other than being a firefighter. So I wanted to know if this affects that in any way. I don't believe it has in the past from the prior contracts, if the language is similar.
I don't have the answer to your question off the top, because you're asking me what's happened in the past,
Right,
and I
right.
don't know. Johnny may know. Do people, when they have an outside job, do they get approval?
Yes.
Yes.
So I would assume that that's been the practice under this, because I know this has been in the contract for some time.
Yeah.
That would continue. By the same token, obviously, we would understand that the chief wouldn't unreasonably deny outside employment. There would need to be a reason. It hurts the fire department
absolutely.
somewhat.
Right. Okay. Section 4, I think this mirrors the same one that we had earlier in the prior contract. Just as a point of information, I think the city policy has been changed to say 60 minutes from the actual work site or workplace or something like that.
And
Because not everybody works at City Hall, you know,
Right.
obviously. So that may be something that I was just letting you know, a point of information, something we need to
I
talk
did
about
add a
further.
sentence, I mean, I think that last sentence is new.
Yeah.
It's just a waiver provision, you know, just coming up with an example. I live in town, but my mother's very sick and my dad can't help him, so I'm gonna need to be living at their place, and it's 70 minutes away.
Yeah.
You know, and I need to be living at their place for the next 6 months or something like that.
Okay.
You know, whatever the reason, the chief could waive it, but it's not a requirement, it's just,
It gives him discretion.
yeah.
And also that section 3 should not, if civil service rules would still apply to off-duty conduct as it's written, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the rules, this section doesn't change the rules. You know, the most important Civil Service Commission rule usually is the one that governs what discipline can be had for, so. And we're not trying to change that, so it falls back to the commission, which in turn falls back to the statute, so.
Okay, the next one is Article 8, civilian employees. This kind of outlines the positions that can be formed by civilian employees, which include EMS administration, communications, informal systems, records, clerical support, and maintenance. Is that intended to be a limitation as to those are the only positions that can be filled by civilian employees?
No, not necessarily. I mean, you ultimately fall back to the definition in the civil service statute. Anything that the civil service statute allows to be performed by civilian employees can be performed by civilian employees, and then there's case law on that. I think these things that are identified here were also identified in the previous contract, and I think they more or less sort of mirror where you're using civilians now.
Okay.
I don't think that yeah, maintenance is there, yes.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I looked at a roster that the guys gave me, and it looked like it covered the positions that currently are civilian. So it's really kind of maintain the status quo provision.
Okay, we need to further discuss this because I need to give you a little bit of history as to why we may have a concern on the limitations, et cetera. We had quite recently, and I think you're aware of this, the community paramedicine program that had been applied for by the health department under a 115 waiver, where the health department gets funding to run the community paramedicine program. That paramedicine program was to be run in conjunction with the fire department because that's where the referrals would come from, and the community paramedicine program was to employ through the health department. I believe it was two paramedics and 2 RNs, solely for case management purposes. They wouldn't be making emergency response calls. They wouldn't have to be required to be certified firefighters. And it was basically case management. It was to help alleviate those habitual 911 callers that need rides to dialysis, that need help, they can't see their medication, need help, giving themselves medication, things like that. Because there's a very high percentage of those habitual callers that take up a lot of the EMS response time. In light of that, the city was faced with a grievance based on this particular provision, which I believe this mirrors the one from the last contract, saying that the chief didn't have the right to hire a non-firefighter, a non-sworn firefighter for the community paramedicine program. And I can give you more information on that if you need, but
I remember something about it because I was talked to about at the time, and I don't know much about it, but let me just suggest this, that you know, rather than try and deal with that in the civilian employee article, maybe the way to do that is in conjunction with our EMS article. Because that does seem to me to be kind of a unique situation. I mean, I can't think off the top of my head of another situation where that might pertain, but certainly that's something that we could talk about in
Yeah,
the
that's
context
something
of that.
we definitely need to talk about because, you know, unfortunately that program is gone because you had to meet certain, I think they're called metrics or milestones that you had to meet in order to get the funding from the health department to get the funding from the state. But, you know, that's something that still, you know, the community has stated an interest in wanting to establish that program in some way or the other. So, you know, and that quite frankly could be done with civilian employees because it's just a case management. It wouldn't be anything that would require any kind of emergency response call. So, you know, that's something we'll be talking about this, but just to keep that in mind, that's where we're coming from. We wanted the ability to make operations more efficient, and try to address issues like these. Okay. So I think the main thing was that we just wanted to make sure that wanted to understand whether that last sentence was an actual limitation.
No, again, I just really pulled that out of the contract and we're trying to maintain the status quo. I really wasn't thinking about that specific situation.
Okay.
But here we are in contract negotiations, so it's a good time to talk about it and hash it out.
This is where where we talk about it. Okay. Okay. Article 9, Section 1 is payroll dues deductions. That looks pretty much the same from the last contract, is that correct?
Yeah, I changed the language a little bit to, you know, make it a little more user-friendly, but it really was not an attempt at all to change the status quo.
Okay, and in Section 2, President's time off, there's a couple things that have changed in here, is that right?
Yeah, you know, right now I think we're deducting 4 hours per firefighter per year, and we're offering to deduct 5 hours for operations, but only 4 for non-operations. You know, 4 hours is more money to a 40-hour week employee than it is to, and that's why we made that distinction. I was kind of surprised that distinction hadn't been made before. We understood the need perhaps to increase it, but I did put a new wrinkle in here, and that is this. You know, if the association president decides I want to be a full-time association president and isn't available, therefore, except in an emergency, of course, to go to respond with the fire department is down a person. And so this gives the fire chief the opportunity to treat that as a vacancy and to go ahead and fill it with an extra body. If and only if the fire chief does that, do we then contribute the leave. I mean, if the fire chief says, no, I'm not going to fill that vacancy, then to my way of thinking, what he's saying is I'm, you know, stationing one of my firefighters over in the union hall, you know, tending to union business rather than, and so to me there's no actual cost to the city of doing that. But if the city says, okay, I want that body to use in the fire department because y'all are short-handed right now, then treat it as a vacancy, fill it, and then we owe you the time because we're paying for that extra body at that point.
Okay.
That's the concept. I'm not suggesting that you all need to agree to that, But
Right.
that's the idea that we're trying to convey, and quite frankly, we're hoping to encourage you to get an extra body in the stations that way. Now, the question is what happens when this person comes back, and I've got this provision in at least one other contract right now, and what happens when they come back, if they're in an officer level, then they would displace an existing officer and that person would go on a reinstatement list.
Okay.
Now, under the statute, reinstatement lists only last for a year, but that has proven not very good for a number of reasons. And so, like for example, in another city where I've negotiated a contract, we have permanent reinstatement lists. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that concept, you go on a reinstatement list and you get the next available vacancy rather than using the applicable hiring list. Okay, so that way, the person that got hired and then got demoted through no fault of their own, and that's going to be the last person, promoted, they know that, okay, I'm getting deemed temporarily but not permanently.
Okay. And when you're talking about the list, is that what's known as a promotional list here?
Yeah.
Is that the same thing? Okay.
In most cities it's a 1-year list. I don't know if it's a 1-year list here or not.
It is, yeah, it is.
And, the number of hours that we contribute, we can talk about that. I realize that from the city's proposal, they were looking at recouping the cost of putting the association president out there. We just need to talk about it.
Okay. I also had a question. Of course, the fiscal years changed, so we would have to reflect that. That would need to be reflected in section A if we discuss that. Was there a reason for the notification by July 20th? Was that because of the fiscal year? I didn't know what
That came from the old contract, believe it or not.
July 20th? Huh.
I think, or hang on a second. Let me see, Article 7, Section 4. On page 21.
It was December 20th.
I think that the reason I made it July 20 instead of December 20 was I was thinking that it made sense to do it on the fiscal year basis rather than the calendar year basis, since
Okay.
everything else you do is on the fiscal year basis. And at that time, I wasn't aware that you'd changed your fiscal year. So if I were doing it today, I'd say by September 20th.
Okay.
And if 10 days isn't enough notice time, we can sure talk about that. The idea is not to put you in a lurch. Quite frankly, I would assume that most of my presidents are going to want to be full-time presidents. I think it's valuable to the city and to the association. But the 10-day notice period was just the same notice period I thought y'all were given, except you were doing it on a calendar rather than fiscal year.
I just didn't know if there was something else. I just want to make sure.
With the exception of health insurance, which I know almost always runs on a calendar year basis, I think most things ought to be on a fiscal year basis since that's how you do your budgeting. But I'm not wedded to that. There may be good reasons for deviating from time to time.
One of the other issues on that, let's see, one of the other questions we have on section 2, part B, is the word offset, to help offset the association salary, the association president's salary. What do you mean by offset?
Well, in other words, the cost of the association president. The city at that point has elected to fill the vacancy created by the association president's absence. There comes a cost to the city. You can't offset it dollar for dollar, by a certain amount of leave because, obviously if the person's a captain, it costs more than if the person is a firefighter 1 or whatever. And so it's just, the purpose of it is to help offset. It may offset it. It may more than offset it. It may less than offset it. The idea is we're bearing at least some of the cost.
Okay. Okay, on Article 9, Section 3, these are the association activities.
Yeah, and I wasn't really, I don't think I changed much about the status quo. If I did, you tell me what it was. That I do see an association proposal number 3, so I may have
Yeah.
done it somehow, but.
The section 3A, I believe, takes away, the prior contract required that permission was obtained from the chief.
You're right, and I can explain that.
Okay.
You know, there are already enough requirements. I mean, you're giving us permission to use fire department property. We're guaranteeing that the meetings will not disrupt the duties of employees or the efficient operations of the fire department. And we're agreeing to give you advance notice. And so, if all of those things are true, I can't imagine a circumstance in which the chief would deny us the ability to meet. If we disrupt the duties of employees or the efficient operation of the fire department, then we're in violation of the contract. Why the chief would need additional authority, you know, to deny the right to have a meeting that doesn't do either of those things, that didn't make a lot of sense to me. And we are going to give him advance notice. So we're not going to surprise him. He or she, as the case may be, is going to know we're there. And so, and in advance, so, you know, if they have a concern about whether it would disrupt duties or efficient operation, those certainly could be discussed beforehand.
Okay. On section A and B, I think the permissions were taken out. Section B, one of the things I know that has been added, I don't know if it's the only thing added, but one of the things I do know that was added was the ability to raise fund for the COPE contribution fund, which is I think it may be a subcommittee of the Fire Association, but the COPE is the Committee on Political Education. It's their PAC, their Political Action Committee. That's a good example of and I'm not saying the chief, I don't know what, I can't speak for the chief, but that would be a good example of something the chief may possibly not give permission for, because political activity on city grounds and while on duty is by policy across the board prohibited by our code of ethics and all the general policies. So I wanted to know why you wanted to include that in there, and how that would be affected on number 8, committee meetings, which could be considered to be a committee.
I don't know that I'll convince you to believe me, but I'm actually trying to help the city here. If the chief were to deny access for that reason, I think it would raise First Amendment concerns. It most definitely would raise concern under the Civil Service Act, because as you know, the Civil Service Act has a political activities section, and it specifically limits the political activities that firefighters can engage in, and then it, you know, says other than that, they can't be limited. And so, you know, the point that I actually had this happen in another city, and I don't want to say the name of the city, but, you know, where the chief said, while you're on duty, you can talk about anything you want, but you can't talk about the union. Okay? And, you know, firefighters in operations have a lot of so-called downtime where they can watch TV, they can study for, you know, if they're the treasurer for their local PTA, they can do the books for the local PTA. And so doing work for the union, to me, falls into that same category. And when you say, okay, you can be the treasurer for the PTA, you can be the treasurer for the MDA, but you can't be the treasurer for the COPE committee on your off time, then you're running afoul, I think, of the First Amendment, because you're actually targeting certain types of activity that you may or may not approve of, and carving that out. It's almost like, you know, a school district allows public groups to use their cafeteria for meetings, but won't allow other groups, and then that runs afoul of the First Amendment. So, you know, the thing is that, again, it can't interfere with their duties, and we give them advance notice. And I certainly would agree to the same thing about won't interfere with the efficient operation of the fire department. But this is really to protect our union treasurer at night, sitting there during their so-called free time, and he's doing the books or whatever. We don't want, you know, the chief pointing at him and saying, okay, you're violating the city ethics policy.
Yeah, well, and when I read section 3A and B, A was actual committee meetings, not just
Mhm.
talking about individuals working on, or. people
Right, that's
talking.
two or more people getting
So I'm
together and
talking
having a
about
meeting.
actual committee meetings, which may include political fundraising. And B, the fundraising activities is political fundraising through the PAC. That's the concern that was just my question as to, you know, what's the reasoning, what's the basis, why should we include that in there?
You mean, so, you know, association members may conduct voluntary fundraising activities. So like firefighter A says to firefighter B at night during their free time, hey, will you join the Cope Fund? You know, you wouldn't think that that would be illegal or violate your ethics policy, would you? But that's the kind of activity that, when I read this, may conduct voluntary fundraising activities for the Cope Contribution Fund, just in the way they say, hey man, will you contribute to United Way this year? Or hey, will you help us, you know, we're gonna fill the boot this weekend, will you help us?
I guess what I need is a better understanding of what fundraising activities for the Cope Fund entail. How are they usually done? What
I'll
do
get
they-
you more specific examples from the guys, but to me, it's no different. Not me. It's no different than any other kind of fundraising activity. To me, it would be mostly, you know, hey man, will you help us out with the Cope Fund? Or just those same ways, hey, will you help us with United Way or fill the boot? Or, you know, I don't see it, except in their free time. I can't imagine it would be any kind of much more elaborate than that. If it's a meeting, then it comes under A as well, and you know.
Okay.
I mean, if you're having our Cope committee meet at a fire station, then certainly A would apply as well. Can I say about C that my folks, I put that in there because it's in the contract, but my folks are not aware that it's ever happened.
I was about to ask that. I don't know.
It's in the contract, and nobody that could come up with an example where somebody's been given an unpaid leave of absence to go to a, but I suppose, you know, if somebody said, hey chief, can I have an unpaid leave of absence to go get a fire science degree? You know, I mean the typical course is they do that in their off time and, you know, around their work time, but I don't know, I guess it could happen.
And this would be any kind of educational leave, whether it be union training, city, you
No,
know, or what?
it's specifically, it has to be training that's designed to increase departmental efficiency and or better employee working conditions.
Okay.
So it has to meet that condition. In other words, if I want to get a degree in, you know, literature, that probably won't, although a better education fire force is a good fire force. But, you know.
Okay. Let's see, and D, I was looking at it because it was organized differently. It looks like, couldn't tell if it changed or not.
I don't think that it did. If
Okay.
it changed, it just, I mean, there are a lot of things that are in the contract, and I'm sure y'all have experienced this too, that the way they're worded is confusing.
Right.
So I did try and simplify a lot. If I changed something in an attempt to simplify it, it may hurt you or it may hurt me, and I hope both sides will catch it
Okay.
and correct it.
Let's see, Article 9, Section 3, Part E. Is this new?
Only the first phrase.
Okay.
I mean, it said that y'all give the president 8 days off per fiscal year, and I thought, well, you know, Carlos doesn't need 8 days off because he's a full-time union president. And so I think this was one of those that, you know, probably you gave the president full-time leave after this was already in the contract and it
I
just got
see.
left in.
Okay.
So certainly if a president in the future decides not to go full-time, then they might want time off to
So
attend.
this only kicks in if you don't have a full-time union president?
Right.
Okay. Okay. And then, on F, section F, we have on the proposal, we have a part, and I think it's in the old contract, on the people for pension board meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know why a pension board member would be covered by this contract? The pension's run by a separate plan. It's.
The pension is run by a statutory plan, and I haven't, are y'all under 6243E? Are y'all under the general Telfer statute, or do you have your own? Okay, well, whichever. You know, most of the boards are statutorily composed, and, you know, the city manager is usually represented on the board. The city treasurer is usually represented, you know, it says the manager or his, her designee, the treasurer or his, her designee, the city treasurer or his, her designee. And then it also mandates that there be firefighter members. So the firefighters are statutorily required to
Statutorily.
appoint some of
Okay.
their members to serve on that pension board.
Okay, so that's who you're talking about, the two firefighter members.
Yeah, yeah.
That may be-
If in fact it
okay.
is to, the
Yeah, I need to look
statute
at
is
that.
still
I had-
uncodified in the 6243E if they're under the general statute. Some of cities like San Antonio have their own statute, but
No, well, I think they're under the general statute and they run under the, the act, what is the act?
it's called TELFRA, and that's
I
Texas,
think we're under Telfa.
yeah.
Yeah.
it's Relief and Retirement Act is the
Yeah,
last
they-
part of it.
they-
I don't remember what the whole acronym stands for.
Yeah, Corpus doesn't have its own, statute.
And there's
Under
a-
the fire pension.
You know, there used to be a pension commissioner that was in Austin in charge of all these. I think the pension commissioner got abolished a couple
Yeah.
of sessions ago. But the local boards remain, and there are city members, public members, and firefighter members.
Okay,
I think there's also a retiree representative.
there is. That's what I know that the board's comprised of, I just don't know why they were, I haven't
It's
done
in
that
the
yet.
statute somewhere.
Okay.
What the board has to consist of. And so, you know, the firefighters, the idea is not to penalize a firefighter who's really fulfilling a statutory duty.
Now, is it, do you know if it's required for them to attend this state pension seminar?
I don't know, but I would point out that any state pension seminar are approved by the fire chief. So, you know, the chief does have some discretion
okay.
there to.
Okay. All right, I was just asking that question, that makes, okay, that, now I have the reason, okay. Section 6 is basically you just fix the language to reflect the same that it was last, in the last contract, right?
Mm-hmm, right.
Okay, section 7, I need a little bit help with understanding what this, with prior approval of the chief, which will not be reasonably denied, the associate president or his or her designee shall have access to department premises to administer this agreement. Visits shall be conducted to minimize any interference with department functions. What is that, what is administering the agreement?
It would be, for example, if a firefighter files a grievance and the president is trying to understand the factual basis for the grievance or something like that, and it might be necessary to visit the firefighter at his or her station. And that would be an example that would come to mind. You know, there are, you know, I don't know what all might happen, but, you know, a lot of times it's easier to find a person in the station than it is at their home or et cetera, especially if they live out of town. So,
Okay.
so. I think this, except for the won't be unreasonably denied, I think it's out of the current contract. And I don't have any reason to think that the chief would unreasonably deny access,
Yeah.
but
And, you know, on the last contract, as we both know, it's kind of pieced together since the 1970s, and unfortunately, there's not a lot of legislative history or notes with regard to the intent of some words and, you know, some phrases. So I'm using this opportunity to ask those questions at
No,
this
absolutely.
point. And I
Makes sense.
apologize if they sound redundant, or it's like, hey, we've already dealt with this before, but this is the time and place to do it, because there's been so many questions that have been raised. I think that we both need to be on the same page when we,
Yeah, no,
when we come up with an agreement.
yeah, I think these are all good questions. I'm not.
Okay.
There is a change in section A.
Yeah, I noticed in section 8, the old contract basically said that neither the city wouldn't discourage any union participation and the union wouldn't solicit any union participation. This seems to have changed on this particular proposal.
Yeah, it did. I was really surprised when I saw that in your contract, because it's almost universal in the fire departments that I've represented that an association representative has been allowed to address a cadet class about the association. It's not really, they are the exclusive representative unless and until they're replaced by another association. And with that comes certain, rights and abilities. It's not per se for encouraging union membership, but to make sure that the people are fully informed about their opportunity to join and about the benefits that come with association membership. That's not really, to me, that's a little bit different than like encouraging, and certainly, if the chief or anybody else wants to be there when the association president or whoever it may be addresses the group. But I don't want them to be too hamstrung. I can't say, I hope you guys join, because that might be interpreted as encouraging or discouraging union membership. I would hope he could say that.
Okay.
The same thing is, B, I think the way the current contract reads is something like association rep can be present and assist the city rep in presenting the training on the contract.
Okay.
We're negotiating a brand new contract, and I would think it is a great time to, have somebody from this committee along with somebody,
From
be-
both sides.
yeah, be in a position to teach that class. I would hope that the person that the fire chief selects on your side would be somebody that attended these sessions.
Okay. And then, section 9, I'll give you concerning the rights and obligations. I couldn't remember if I had said this.
That's in the current contract,
Okay.
and, I'm glad to see it.
Yeah, the only question I had was, who would do the training? Would this also be, because it just says training. It doesn't say whether it's gonna be a joint effort or.
And I'm certainly, if you
Okay.
wanted to make it a joint thing, I don't know off the top of my head, maybe these guys do, Section 8B really refers to cadets, but Section 9 really refers to all firefighters.
Mhm.
And so, at the end of it, let's say we get a contract, as we all hope to do, it's gonna be perhaps quite a bit different than prior contracts. And firefighters do need to be trained on those differences. And so, certainly if you wanna give us a counter suggesting how that training should occur, we'll be glad to consider it, so.
Okay.
It occurs to me the same thing, have a joint presentation.
Yeah.
That's especially gonna be true with things like, to the extent that we change up the way EMS is done now, it's gonna be really important that people understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Good, I'm getting through my questions a lot faster than I thought I would. I'm doing good over here.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we have some big ones coming up, like Article 10, which is wages.
Right.
Okay. Now, I'm gonna ask some questions that I have today. Of course, we have to go back, look at it, crunch some numbers. We'll have more questions that come up. So this is gonna be something that we're gonna be talking a lot about over the course of at least a couple of sessions. So I just wanna let you know that this is something we will be looking at and working on.
Wages, obviously is often one of the latter things agreed to.
Right.
So,
But we need to be working on it throughout the time. That way we can whittle it down because there's a lot of big issues. We just need to narrow it down, see where we can get. So here are the questions I have.
We're looking at Article 10.
Yeah, Article 10 on Section 1. This obviously mirrors the basic rank structure that we have in the last contract.
Exactly, except that it does add a step 5 for the
Right.
battalion chief, which I know came up as a topic in the last, in the 2014 negotiations. So nobody's trying to hide that.
Right, and that's what I was gonna add, that it adds that battalion chief step 5 120-month rank. Now, on all of these seniority steps, I just want to make sure I understand, all of these steps are based on time alone, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
and I think that's the way it currently is handled, too.
And then Section 2 is wages pursuant to the rank structure. Okay, first rank structure and steps.
Okay.
The addition of the 120 month step for battalion chief is reflected in here, is that correct?
Mhm. And I
then-
just, I think what I did was, I took the percentage gap between 30-month and 120-month captain and tried to duplicate it with the bat chief. The other numbers were just putting a 1.5% raise on the existing pay scale.
Okay.
That one I had to come up with new, and I think that's how I did it.
Okay. And then the 120, let's see, 120 month step for the battalion chief, how did you get that again?
I think what I did was I looked at the gap between the 30 and 120-month captain, and it was X percent, and I just used that same percentage
Okay.
and multiplied it by the 7,084, which is the 30-month step.
Yeah, I think each step across the board is approximately 4.5%.
That's what it never came out exactly the same, but they all seemed close. And
Yeah,
so-
it's kind of close. It's probably like 4.499921, something
Yeah,
like that. But
and,
it's
and I rounded off to whole dollars, as y'all apparently have
Right.
done, so that's why it doesn't come out exact.
okay. And then that was Section 8, Section 2A. On Section 2B, we have, this is where the 4-year. This
Yeah.
includes a 4-year duration. We're looking at 4 years on top of the first year with the 1.5, and then on
Mhm.
October 1st of each year, from 2015 through 2018, you list some.
By this time, I had learned that you changed your fiscal year.
Yeah, some percentage pay raises. Okay.
Right.
What are those percentage numbers based on?
What are they based on?
Yeah.
Well, they're based on two factors. Number one, we didn't want to be unreasonable, but number two, we have a sense that the Corpus Christi Fire Department, in fact, is lagging behind other Texas cities what they're paying their firefighters. And so it is an attempt to catch them up a little bit to make staying in Corpus Christi a little more attractive than going elsewhere. In talking to the guys, I've learned that y'all have lost a few firefighters to places like Georgetown and places a little further inland. I'm not saying that's the only reason, but I think a reason is that they can make more money in some of these other places, and you don't want to be a training ground for other people's fire departments. You want to be you want to keep the people that you get in and train. You want them to be lifers right here, and that's what that reflects. We understand that the city is going to have to calculate its ability to pay and look at what it thinks its revenues are going to be. We certainly welcome it if you want to agree to it right now today, but we don't necessarily anticipate that.
I would be looking for a job.
Hey, I'd be a hero. Of course, I am already a hero.
Yeah.
You guys aren't.
Yeah. Okay, and these percentage numbers, were they based on any comparable cities? Did you use any? comparable?
I can get you data on comparable
Okay.
cities, but I'm not pulling to mind any, I generally know what other cities are paying, like Austin, San Antonio, Baytown, Houston, Beaumont, Port Arthur, Brownsville, McAllen.
Okay.
I mean, I can get that information pretty quickly, but I don't think you're gonna find that you're ahead of the curve. I think you're gonna find you're behind the curve. And if you want to, we could even go through the exercise of trying to identify some cities that we think are comparable cities and looking at their wage package and seeing how it compares. I can tell you that with regards to your supplemental pays, you're pretty low on some of the sub pays vis-a-vis what other cities pay. And I'm thinking specifically about certification and assignment pay as it relates to EMS.
And then, let's see, Article,
Did you want to talk about Section 3 at all?
yeah, Article 10, Section 3, the signing bonus, that's where I was going next.
We didn't get a contract negotiated in time for the new fiscal year, and this is an attempt to give us the benefit of the 1.5% raise we've asked for this year for the entire year. I'm aware that under, I think it's Article 3, Section 3 of the Texas Constitution, that there's always a question about giving retroactive pay raises, a constitutional question. So we give the pay raises that have been missed for those months in the form of a signing bonus at the time the agreement is ratified. We don't give them a retroactive pay increase. It would be, nonetheless, the signing bonus, like other pays to the firefighter, would be subject to employment taxes.
Okay. And that formula you said was just based on the 1.5%?
Yeah,
Since-
and
since, I
that
guess,
times the
August
8 was, I
1.
was just trying to figure out how many months we might miss before we
Okay.
come to an agreement. And keep in mind that 1.5% raise is not really even truly 1.5%, because you've got a 14-month fiscal year here, and they're not gonna get another raise
No,
until
Last year
it's
was
12.
14, I'm sorry.
this year. The next year's gonna start in October 1st.
This started already. This is a 12-month.
Oh,
We're in
this
now.
is. Oh, never mind.
Yeah, the 14-month was the
Then it is a
prior
true
one.
1.5.
Yeah, so they just extended the last fiscal year so we could start fresh on October 1 and do 12 months from there.
Okay, so how did y'all handle the, let's just take personal leave, for example. I know that, I think it's like every August the 1st, you put another 5. Well, this August 1st was in the middle of your fiscal year. Did you go ahead and put 5 in then?
Yes, we didn't change it to the fiscal year. Now everybody will get they'll still get it on August 1st.
The impact of that, of course, is that the guys lost a little bit in that year, because it was a 14-month year, and instead of getting 5 days for 12 months, they got 5 days for 14 months.
No.
They got it August 1st, beginning of that 14-month year, and they got it at 12 month of that 14-month year, so they got it twice in one.
Right,
fiscal year.
right. I see what you're saying.
So it's 12 months apart, because it's
Yeah.
gonna be
Right
August
now it
1st,
is.
regardless
You're
of
right.
when
The
We're
fiscal
not
year
gonna
ha-
change
It will
that.
always be on August.
Okay.
from August
So
to-
even though you've changed your fiscal year, you're not gonna,
We just didn't
Keep
change
it
the
simple.
personal leave
Okay.
use.
We
So it's
didn't
still
under-
August 1st to July 31st.
we didn't understand it on our side. We thought it was a yearly allotment, and when you change your fiscal year, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, in order to try and, because it got too complicated, we were trying to reconcile everything. It was just decided that just leave it August 1 because it's already set like that. Everyone's used to using them like that. No, we didn't want anybody to lose anything, so we just left it the same.
Okay.
So there shouldn't be any impact. If there is any impact, please let us know, because that was not the intention.
Okay.
Okay? Okay. Let's see, Article 11, this is the supplemental pay, all the ad pays.
Right.
Let's see. The longevity pay, did was change it to just $6 a month.
$6 for all of the year. I
Up
mean,
to
it's not a,
25,
yeah, up
yeah.
to 25. It's not a, in the aggregate, you may feel like it's an increase. To the firefighter, it's not that significant of a bump, but it is a bit of a bump.
Okay. On the certification pay, you've listed some increases. What are the increases that you have listed? What are those based on?
Let me just say with regards to all of the supplemental pays here,
Okay.
I started at pretty much at the position where we recommended, I mean, where we made proposals last year. That's our start. I know that y'all have rejected those. I can tell you just anecdotally that y'all are well behind other cities, in my opinion, what you pay for cert and assignment pay. If you want me to put facts to that, I mean, I can get you comparable data from other cities. Before I go through that exercise, I want to know that it would actually make a difference to you. I mean, my sense is that cities normally look at where we are now and what's our ability to pay, as opposed to are we doing what other cities are doing. If it would make it, you know, there is a tension there though, because to the extent that you're lagging too far behind other cities, you know, you're not an attractive employer for them, and I know you want to attract qualified firefighter recruits. I mean, it's very essential work that they do. You know, I think it should matter to the city a lot, and I'm happy to go through it and find out, and if it doesn't show what I say it'll show, I'll present that to you too. I won't hide the ball, but I you know, I was pretty surprised, quite frankly, to learn that y'all are as low as you are on some of these things. And I think that some of the problems you're having, with, especially with regards to EMT paramedic issues, would be alleviated if it was, you know, more beneficial to people to have those kinds of certifications and assignments. So, but you know, I fully expect counters from y'all.
Mhm.
I hope that you will seriously consider bumping these things up. They really do need to be bumped up. I understand that it's all money in and money out when the city's looking at it, and so it's a question of where do you put money? Do you put it in base pay? Do you put it in other things? But some of these really do need to be looked at being bumped up some.
Okay. Have y'all done any kind of, from your end, any kind of costing? Do you know how much of an impact or an increase that would be monetarily?
We know what
Or
you
value?
did last time. I think that the guys had some questions about that.
And that's why I'm asking. That way, if, you know, I want to, for all of us to be on the same page, because when we start negotiating on this, I want to fully understand the basis. I think it is important, you know, and I understand that it's a lot of work to put down the comparables, and we'll get there, and I think we're gonna at one point need to exchange it. But at this point, when we're starting to talk about these things, where's the cost? What can, you know, we've got to analyze what the city can afford. We've got what we can budget. Where are you coming from? There's a lot of factors that we're going to have to look at. So, you know, we're interested in that. I know that we have our budget and our accountants, and they do, you know, that's their job. I don't do the numbers because that's not what I do. And that's what they do. So I know that they put together something, and there were some questions, and there may have been some disagreements from your end about how we did it. So I want to know, how are you costing it, and what numbers do you come up with, so we can figure out, try to figure out what the value is, because you don't want to enter in a contract and not know what it's going to cost.
I think I understand that totally. I know that but you know, there are hidden costs to the decisions that cities make too. I mean,
That's right.
You know,
Yeah.
if you lose 3 or 4 trained firefighters a year to other cities because they've got better paying benefits, then that's the sort of a hidden cost that's not being factored in. And I know that your city, especially in the last 4 years, there's been very little in the way of hiring. And that's putting a lot of stresses and strains on your fire department right now that really do need to be addressed. And so, you know, like I said, I'm totally willing to go through the exercise of showing you what other cities are paying, so you can compare. But I do need to know from you that would actually make a difference or influence you. Because if it's simply, yeah, we understand we're losing people, but we can't afford to pay any more, you know, no matter what the facts and figures show, you know, that's information that we need. But, you know, in terms of how much it'll cost the city, we can certainly share data, but I'm very skittish about that because I don't want this to become a politicized thing on either side.
Right, and that's not the,
Yeah.
you understand where I'm coming
Yeah.
from, that I don't.
I know you gotta
intend to
prepare a
use it like
budget
that,
every year.
but You gotta prepare a budget, I've gotta explain the basis, you know, why you believe that your proposals are legitimate. You know, I need to say it's not just numbers pulled out of the air, they got them from somewhere, and this is their reasoning for it. Because without being able to explain that, then, you know, I want to be able to say, okay, let's evaluate this, let's negotiate on this. What is their reasoning, where they're coming from? That way we can counter and say, okay, we understand where you're coming from, these are the factors that we're dealing with, where are we gonna meet, kind of deal. So,
Yeah.
so that's where I'm coming from. There's absolutely no intention to.
No, I understand. You know, but again, there are all kinds of things we can do in terms of, you know, I mean, there are two questions here. One, how much can you afford to pay? And number two, you know, how competitive are you?
Yeah.
And then I guess you'd have a third question is, do we need to be competitive? We're out here, you know, El Paso maybe doesn't need to be as competitive because where are you going to go? You're out there in El Paso. Don't tell them I said that. Although, interestingly enough, the El Paso Police Department sets wages by looking at 7 cities that both sides have agreed upon and hitting at the median of that, believe it or not.
Say that again?
There it is.
What the city of El Paso does for its police department is they have agreed jointly on 7 comparable cities.
Mhm.
And they set their pay to be in the median
Oh, wow.
of that.
How did they go about coming up to, or doing the exercise of agreeing to the comparable cities? Was that part of the
They
negotiation?
did that in a past contract, and every contract we revisit what the 7 cities will be. We always want to lop off certain ones, and they always want to lop off certain ones. And it actually has become problematic in that, you know, a couple of the cities that are comparable cities are in litigation right now, so we don't know what their pay raises are going to be. So, you know.
Okay.
But at any rate, I'm not suggesting that for here because most finance people pull their hair out if they don't have certainty.
Right.
So.
Okay.
So what I would say is, you know, come back. We sincerely hope. I know that your first proposal last time, or your counter last time, was status quo, and I wish you would look at that because I think it's been quite a while since you've looked at raising your sub price. And if I'm wrong about that, I stand corrected.
Yeah, I'll look. I need to look at the history of that and see where we're at. On the assignment pays, you added there's an added for a boat rescue station, and I know we talked about it the last session, but this is a new session, I really don't recall. So, can you remind me why they're proposing to add
Johnny,
that in?
I'm going to need you to
Yes, sir.
talk about this.
What?
Why are we adding a boat rescue
The boat
station?
rescue,
What is the boat rescue station? Why do
Station
we want?
13.
Why do we want assignment pay for that?
I think one of the biggest reasons, this is all from memory, was that, number one, they have a boat that's assigned to that station. They do specialized training for that boat in particular. And for that, they don't get anything, yet we have guys that are at station 3, 5s, and 12s who get specialized pay for specialized training. So these guys, when they go out there, they're expected to be boat rescue, yet they don't get anything for it.
and they're required to have that specialized training in order to be able to do the boat rescue?
No.
No.
No, and that was one of the things that we wanted to talk about once we got into that subject was You know, maybe having some kind of qualifications for that.
Okay.
Is that an assignment or a rescue? That's an assignment pay.
Yeah, it's an assignment pay.
Yeah, I don't think we put a certification pay for it.
Yeah, here's the certs, and it's not there. So.
Yeah, it was more of an assignment in that when they have a boat rescue, that's the unit that's generally called,
Okay.
so,
And you said Station 13?
yes, ma'am.
Do you have the same question about Battalion 1?
Yeah.
On Battalion 1, the thinking is that we have 3 battalions, Bat 1, 2, and 3. Bat 1, Richie can probably explain it maybe a little better than I can, but Bat 1 used to be an assistant chief. And about 10 years ago, we took the assistant chiefs off duty and made them all battalion chiefs. But Battalion 1 does the work of the assistant chief.
So.
He does the roster, the sick leave, the scheduling, you know, and he's charged with that, making the Kelly Day rosters, the vacation rosters, you know. He does
So,
have a few more tasks.
Out of all you said there's 3 battalion chiefs or 4? There's
3.
So there's 3 battalion chiefs and whoever.
3 Bat 1s.
Oh, 3
There
bat
are
ones.
3 Bat, because there's 3 shifts.
Okay, but how many battalion chiefs?
3
are
per
there?
shift, one of them is Bat 1 though.
Oh, I get. I'm sorry.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
so there's 3 per shift, and one of them's always going to be assigned battalion
Always.
1, and that one basically has all the administrative duties on top of.
I wouldn't say all of them, but
Okay.
he probably has the 80% of them.
Most
Okay.
significant ones.
He has the most significant ones. What he, in a normal battalion chief, battalion 2 and battalion 3, and I'm just gonna make up numbers because I don't do that job, but they can be done with their task in a day in 12 hours. Well, that's probably a little long, probably 8 hours. And in a battalion 1 scenario, it's probably closer to 11 to 12. You know, that's how much more work he has. It's
Okay.
probably another 50% more work. And it's all administrative.
Okay.
Pay for higher class duties. I'm sorry, did you have more questions about
No.
3?
No, I didn't.
Section 4, pay for higher class duties. I was kind of surprised about this. Y'all are really kind of the unique among cities that I'm aware of in that you don't do what the statute says, and what you have been paying at these levels is actually quite a bit less than what the statute would require. I mean, under the Civil Service Act, you get the pay of the higher classification during the time that you perform the duties, pretty much on an hour-for-hour basis. And so, even at the levels that we've set it, I still believe in a lot of cases they're going to realize less money than they would under the Civil Service Act. But you can run the numbers with your pay table and check me on that. Section 5, educational incentive pay. I actually have agreed with your proposal to limit, you have a kind of a difficult system right now where they get paid based on hours of education rather than based on degrees. And so I've really kind of agreed to your proposal to pay them based on attaining the degree. But I put a grandfather provision in there. I don't want somebody to lose educational incentive pay that they're getting right now. So if somebody's halfway to a bachelor's degree and they're getting paid for that, they would just keep that pay unchanged, and they wouldn't get increased pay as they got more hours like they would under the current contract, but they would keep what they have, and then when they got their degree, that's when they would get the pay that's assigned to the degree.
Okay.
So it's basically your provision with a grandfather clause. I mean, it's basically your proposal with a grandfather clause.
And everything else, the expense and textbook reimbursement's the same, correct?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then,
Yeah, that's not a complete sentence.
What
It's-
is?
It needs to be corrected.
which one?
D.
city's current practice of providing firefighters enrolled in an associate degree program in fire science at Del Mar College shall continue unchanged during the life of this agreement.
It's supposed to be continuing to provide them what? It's paid for reimbursement for expenses and textbooks. Is that what you mean?
The city's current practice of providing firefighters enrolled in associate.
Providing firefighters
Providing what?
expense and textbook
Providing
reimbursement, I guess, is that
No, let's
what-
look at Article 5, Section 7.
Yeah,
The
it just seems-
subsection is expenses
It may
and
be-
textbooks.
Yeah, but it needs to read in the sentence itself.
You're undoubtedly
What's the
right.
page on the,
It's under the, must be under the, edge 16, page 16.
Article 5, Section 6.
I'll look at it and we'll, if,
I think,
Missing what it is.
yeah, and what is
Missing what?
meant,
In other words, if you read it, it doesn't say what it is that's being done.
right. And so basically it's the expense in textbook reimbursement that's being.
yeah,
okay.
the sentence is on page 16 of the current contract, shall not expand the practice of payment of expenses or provision of textbook and materials, such other areas of study as presently provided for an associate degree in applied science or fire science at Del Mar College.
Mhm.
Somehow, what I put down there grew out of that, but I agree with you, it doesn't make
Okay.
sense. So, I imagine, oh, yeah, because I've got expense and textbook reimbursement.
As the heading.
As a top,
Yeah.
subtitle.
Never doesn't say.
So what that should say is expense and textbook reimbursement shall continue unchanged.
Shall continue.
I'm gonna add that to mine and resend it to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Section 6, the performance award is unchanged from the last contract, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay.
In looking at it, it seems to me that the performance award grew out of an attempt to bridge the gap in a particular negotiation and then just sort of continued thereafter, so.
And then, section 7, that's from the old contract.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah, that's the pay periods, section 9, pay periods on page 17. It takes up to 12.
Yeah, this is Article 12, overtime. Now, I was
Okay.
just gonna ask you to go ahead and walk me through any change. It'd probably be easier for you to just tell me what changes are in here. Cause I was looking at it and it was kind of hard for me to reconcile what the differences were. I did find some stuff that was changed, but in the grand scheme of things, I wanted you to tell me what does this encompass?
Yeah. Okay, well, section 1, the use of the 7K cycle, that's not changed at all. I mean, that's the current practice.
Okay.
There will be 4 work cycles a year. When the firefighter gets a Kelly day, they'll work 192.
Mm-hmm.
They won't get any cycle overtime for those, obviously. All others, they're scheduled to work 216 hours unless they take some sort of leave. So that's status quo. Hours worked is, I think, as we go through it, I'll tell you, I think that's the only change. It's in section 2. We are asking you to count vacation and personal days as time worked for purposes of determining entitlement to cycle overtime pay. I think that is not the current practice, so that's a change. It is consistent with what's being done in most of in a lot of, I won't say most, in a lot of other cities. Kelly Days is just status quo. Y'all are currently getting one each calendar quarter, and so there's no change in that. And a person who's absent for the full calendar quarter gets no Kelly Day. That's also in the current contract. Base pay and ad pays. This is not a change from the current contract. There apparently was some. I'm pulling all of this overtime from about 3 different places in the contract.
Right.
There is, there's the overtime provision itself on page 8 of the contract. There is the appendix, I think it's D.
With the formulas?
Yeah, the formulas. And then there are a couple other places that have references to overtime that are not coming to me, but off the top of my head. But I tried to put everything related to overtime in this one article. And where I came up with these pays is straight out of, I think it's appendix D, the base pays and the ad pays. If you look up at this little explanatory paragraph at the top, you can see the blue highlighting.
What
That's
page
where
is that?
It is page 61.
61.
The ad pays that are defined therein as longevity, assignment, and certification pays. And then down lower, it says educational incentive pay, EMS supervisor, and assistant. So those are the same things that are in the current contract.
Okay.
Okay, no change. Section 5A, cycle overtime pay. I have simplified the way the formulas are written, but I have not changed them.
So you just simplify them, not the substance of them, just.
The substance of them is exactly the same. I used the, I talked to your finance department people. They divide by 80 and get a cycle rate. They divide by 180 and get a dock rate. Then they apply the formula that way, and then they multiply by the hours over. Now mine says hours over 204, but obviously that would end at hour 212, because that's, you never have more regularly scheduled hours than 212 for an operations firefighter. So we're really, if you want to say hours over 204 and less than 213 or something like that, we could. But that's no change from existing law. Overtime for holdover and callback hours, again, no change from the current formula, no change from the existing law. The 3-hour minimum for a callback is the existing contract. Section 6, overtime pay for non-operations, your 40-hour employees. Again, no change from the current contract. That's how it is done currently. Section 7, effect on other laws. I divided it between FLSA and state law. The reason for that is simple. There is case law that says that a union can't, through collective bargaining, waive FLSA rights. There are limited exceptions to that spelled out in the statute itself, but generally you can't waive your employees' FLSA rights. But on the other hand, you do, under the statute, get a credit if you're paying more than the law requires. Then you get credit for that against what you owe under the law. So this is, I think, a better way of saying what your contract already said, which is you're entitled to all those credits. And I can tell you my opinion is, but y'all need to, do this for yourself. My opinion is that your current system is more generous than what the FLSA requires, and that so you shouldn't get in any trouble under the FLSA. And in state law, to the extent that this differs from the requirements of state law, obviously you can preempt those, and so that's what your current contract says, and that's what this says too. Okay. 142.0015, has been modified over the years to, with limited exceptions, to pretty closely track the FLSA. But there are some important exceptions. And, you know, now, so that's kind of a run through it. I know that you had proposed in last year's negotiations to go to a straight FLSA model. I would urge you to rethink that. I mean, you know, if you were to do that, then, you know, my first question to you would be, okay, how much does your average firefighter make in overtime a year now? How much would an average firefighter make on a straight FLSA model? And if you say, well, they'd make $100 less a year, let's just say, then what you're telling me is you've just given every firefighter in the department a $100 pay cut. And so it's one thing to say, we can't afford to pay more. It's another thing to say, we want to cut your pay. And so my question to you is, since in the area of overtime, we're not requesting any increase, obviously, with the exception of the leave hours, which I pointed out, and certainly that's subject to negotiation. We're not requesting any up. We're asking you to think about not requesting to take it down, because especially, let's say, if you say, well, golly, man, we could save $1,000 a year on firefighters, you know, per firefighter. Well, then that's $1,000 per year that each of your firefighters has just had a cut in pay. And I, you know, look at your own pay and say, well, can I afford to take a $1,000 pay cut? And the answer is probably it wouldn't feel good whether I can afford it or not. So that's an important thing, and it's all the more important here because you haven't hired in a long time, and you are, you know, you may disagree with me, but you are, from our perspective, severely understaffed. You're having trouble right now with that understaffing, and you, quite frankly, your overtime costs are increasing because of that understaffing. So cutting overtime the way you pay overtime pay is a way of helping fix that problem, but you're doing it on the backs of your employees when you do that, and that's not a good way to accomplish that. A better way to accomplish reducing overtime, in my opinion, in a way that actually helps the city, although not in its pocketbook necessarily, is to increase the level of your staffing so that you don't need to call back to hold over as many people on overtime. So I'm not certainly suggesting to you how you're going to staff the fire department. I've already told you we're not making a staffing proposal. But I'm just saying that trying to solve your overtime problem in the way that you suggested doing it really literally means a pay cut for every firefighter. And we're asking you to really think hard about that.
Okay, we'll look that over. We're gonna have to crunch some numbers, get some info, so we'll be talking about that. That was way more efficient than me trying to figure out what that was.
I spent more time trying to get my head around that article than any other thing I've
Yeah.
done so far on this negotiation. It's overtime is it's a, you know,
Yeah.
y'all have a formula that wasn't easy to decipher at first glance.
Okay, on this, Article 15, we went through it briefly, but with the time that we had, I wasn't able to really thoroughly go through it to get all my questions, so I was just gonna see if you could walk
Yeah,
me through.
Section 1 is really just the same holidays that you're providing now.
Okay.
We added a provision that, you know, if you give an additional holiday to everybody else, let's say that you decide to give Christmas Eve to all your employees, and we would ask that firefighters get it too, just that they be treated the same as other employees. We've defined how many hours we put in their leave banks for each of the holidays. You know, unfortunately, obviously some firefighters have to work on every holiday because you can't ever leave the fire department unstaffed. If they are required to work on the holiday, they get paid at, according to an overtime type formula. These formulas that I have there, A and B, are the current formulas that are found in your Appendix D. Okay?
Okay.
I'm trying to make the contract more user-friendly. In other words, so my thinking here was, why am I kind of repeating stuff? Well, if I want to know about holidays, I just got to go to the holiday article,
Right.
and I can find everything I need to know right there. And so that's why I did it that way. But it is not a change from the current practice at all. And I don't recall that y'all were asking for that in the last round. And in Section 3, I simply, again, had to find base pays and add pays, I think, as they are in the contract currently.
Okay.
Okay, and again, that comes from that Appendix D.
So the only thing that changed here was basically that addition, if there's any other city employees did any holidays, y'all would get the same.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
That's the only difference. And, there's a provision that a lot of people don't know about. I think it's in Chapter 142 or 141 of the Local Government Code, that firefighters and police are entitled to the same holidays and vacation days as are given to other employees. So that really is just to avoid the loss of that statutory right.
Okay, Article 16, sick leave and sick leave pool.
This is another one where we really pulled from a whole bunch of different places, and I tried to, I didn't get it done everywhere, but I tried to at least with some provisions to tell you where they came from.
Okay.
Because I went through the contract a couple of times before I hit all of these provisions. Accrual of sick leave, I think that's just status quo. I did put in a provision, if you provide more to other municipal employees, you do that for us too. And I defined a working day again as 12 for operations and 8 for the 40-hour people. Use of sick leave for personal injury or illness. Only change here is that second sentence of Section 2. Right now, it doesn't have that phrase absent exigent circumstances. And obviously, I'm on my way to work. I don't expect to be late. I'm in a car accident. I'm being rushed to the hospital when I'm supposed to be there. You wouldn't expect me to call in. And so I'm just saying that's the kind of exigent circumstance that would have allowed the firefighter not to have to call in. Something that comes up and can't have been predicted. Section 3, use of sick leave for immediate family member. That is out of the current contract. And I use the same definition of immediate family that's in the current contract. I didn't even compare it to the FMLA, but I assume it's pretty close. When a physician statement is required, again, current contract, the third bullet there under Section 4, just cause, that just cause provision is in the current contract, so I just kept it there. The sick leave retirement pool, I changed this a little bit, only in that I took off the upper cap. Because I wasn't clear, it said if you got down to 500, you took 2 days from every person, but then you had a 2,000 hour cap, and I thought, well, what if you took 2 sick leave days from everybody and it raised it over the 2,000 day cap? What would you do? And or what if it doesn't get there? Do you just do 2? So what I said was, when it gets down to 500, you deduct 2 days, and the deductions won't be made more than annually. The Section B on how it's used to provide additional sick leave at time of termination is unchanged, but except for that last sentence in Section B. If Johnny here retires and he gets credit for some of his days over 90, but not all of them, the days that he doesn't get credit could go into the sick leave retirement pool, and that would be another way of bringing that sick leave retirement pool up without, really essentially, I don't think there would not be a direct cost to the city in that circumstance. And then C, I think, is current contract language. Again, I've simplified the language a lot. And then subsection D, what do you receive from the sick leave pool? That's the same formula used to pay drag-up pay under Article 18. And that's because I found that formula, and I think it's Appendix E of the current contract, and it was the drag-up thing, so that's not intended to be a change. You let me know if it is.
Okay.
And we'll get to the drag-up formula in a minute. But that's what I'm doing there. So basically, with those changes I've noted about the sick leave pool, it's essentially status quo. Amy.
Okay. Article 17, vacation leave.
Section 1 on accrual, that's the current formulas. That section 1 is just basically what is currently being done. Section 2 is just how do you schedule and use vacation leave. What my folks have told me is that there's a Chief, you know, they have a system that they use in the department, and we're just saying use that same system, keep using that same system. So no change in the status quo. Section 3, use of vacation leave for death not in the immediate family. This was a random sentence stuck in an article that had to do with death in the immediate family, so I just made it its own section so that we wouldn't lose sight of it. I use that same immediate family definition. So you have your long lost college friend who dies, you say to the chief, can I use vacation? Go to John Doe's funeral, and chief says, yeah, you can. So there you go. Vacation leave buyback program. Again, the vacation leave buyback program is in the current contract, and this is basically an attempt to simplify the language a little bit, but to mirror that. So there's really not any changes that I'm aware of in the current practice and how we're proposing that it continue.
Yeah, and I appreciate you trying to simplify the language, because that really
Well,
helps out a lot.
we're simplifying it in two regards. Number one is we're changing some sentences that we'll probably piece together over the years. But number two, I'm really trying to collect things that relate to a single topic into a single article. That's why I've got separate articles for holiday, vacation, sick. I was finding things all over the contract.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Under 4, the first sentence, firefighters may sell and the city agrees to buy back 2 working days of vacation leave for each working day of vacation leave used by the firefighter or accrued. I'm not sure.
In the current contract, it
Used,
says
but
used. In other words, if that means I can sell back 2 working days for every day of leave I actually use. So to sell back the full 10, which is the max,
Okay.
I have to actually also use 5 during that
Okay,
same year.
Interesting. That's a
Now,
different formula.
I mean, I'm not wedded to that requirement, but
Okay.
that's
I
the
just
current
didn't-
system.
I've never seen that kind of a system, so I'm just.
Me neither.
familiar with it. Okay.
You know, but it seems to be working for everybody, so
Okay.
I didn't change it. But yeah, that's current contract language. Article 18, drag up pay. What I'm most proud of here is that I learned to actually use my Mac to make a chart.
That is difficult.
So let's just all take a moment and really admire that chart in section 1.
It's beautiful.
Gosh, I know.
It's symmetrical and everything.
Who'd have thunk it? But those are the current. That's
Formulas.
the current formulas. There's no change.
And that's what's it called, E, Appendix E, right?
Yes. Let me make sure about that, but I think that's what it is.
Yeah, calculating drag up vacation and sick leave and vacation leave sell back for fire employees.
Yeah. So, then section 2 is just, the first 90 days, you get drag up pay for that. And then you also get, obviously, the days that you qualify for under the sick leave retirement pool. Then the drag up pay rate in section 3, and I highlighted and underlined in blue educational incentive pay, because right now your drag up pay in the contract includes all these other things, but it does not include educational incentive pay. So I didn't want you to think I was trying to sneak it past you. So that's an addition to current contract language, and that literally, I think, is the only change in the current system. If you look at the formulas, if you look at Appendix E, it's the same formula. I just simplified it. In other words, where it says divided by 2808, what yours actually says is divided by 26 times 54 times 2. And if you do the math, it's 2808. And the same with the other one. I just multiplied 26 times 40 times 2. And so it's just a simplification, but simplified form, it is the same formula that currently is being used.
Okay.
So, there are, there are some things that are unique to Corpus, but basically in a lot of these last articles, we're not really trying to change the status quo except where I've noted.
Okay.
But I am trying to make it to where anybody could understand it.
Absolutely. And I appreciate the trying to reorganize it. There
Well,
have
it's
been many
funny, I'll
times
tell you,
where-
what I'm doing is going through the old contract, and as I deal with the topic, I'm highlighting it in yellow, so, and hoping at the end of this ordeal, the whole thing will be yellow, so. That's not to say that some things won't get knocked out if they don't make sense, but.
Yeah. Okay, well, I appreciate all the questions. We will have what we're gonna take, what we have, get information, crunch numbers, et cetera. Like I said, let's see, I had a couple of proposals that I think that we can go through rather quickly.
Okay.
I'll walk you through them. We can answer questions. You can take them back, get more questions. And that way, and then we'll go through this, and we'll probably caucus until the next, or finish for today after this, and then prepare for February 5th. We'll work on
Okay.
getting this location.
And just to recap, I'll probably, unless you tell me differently, I'll probably at some point next week send y'all a few more proposals.
Okay.
Now, you're gonna be gone.
I'm going to be
Is
gone.
there somebody you want me to send? I don't wanna send anything around
Yes.
your back. Is there
Yes.
somebody you want me to send stuff to?
I'm gonna have you send them to, I want you to email them to me, but if you can please, copy Lilia Castro and Renato Garcia. I'll, email you with them copied, that way you can just reply to it.
Okay.
Just full disclosure, I will not have email access. I won't have anything until probably about, maybe Monday of the, not this next Monday, but the next Monday. So.
Good for you.
I did that on purpose, because otherwise I'd be working the whole time. But I will have them, get them, analyze it for me, and I will start cracking on them that Monday so that we can be prepared for that Friday.
Okay.
So, and I'll be cracking the whip on them while I'm gone. Make sure that they're doing something. But, at any rate, I will have more proposals on the 5th, obviously, and, counter proposal.
Those are.
And, and you know what, I will email these to you, electronically, and then
That'd be great.
I'll copy Lily and Renato, and then that way you can just reply to that same one.
Okay.
On that emailing stuff to Craig, anything that you email to Craig, can you also copy Johnny Ray?
we would like to know anything that
Yeah,
she sends to you.
although I'll tell you, Frank, what I'm gonna do is, I've got, Johnny, excuse me, sorry, I'll know all your names by the end.
I'm Scott.
But I just want to make sure anything that comes your
Hold
way,
on a second, Bob was saying something.
Yeah.
that Johnny Ray gets a copy of it, and that way he'll let us know what's going on.
What I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna make a, list, mailing list. And from now on, all proposals that I get, I'm gonna send to the entire team immediately. Okay?
And my other question was, you wanted us to cost out our proposals and where we're getting our numbers from. Is there a certain list of cities that y'all are gonna be using? Cause we don't wanna use a certain set of cities and y'all using something else and then we're way off on the numbers.
Well, I think,
They haven't specifically asked for that yet.
yeah, I think
So-
right now what we're just asking is if you had costed out anything, and we hadn't gotten to the point, like, we were discussing, first we need to see what the costs are, et cetera, then we'll start working towards coming up with comparable cities, and we'll eventually get there, but, we gotta work towards that. We gotta crunch through the numbers, go through the language, and we will get there.
Well,
So I don't need it.
I thought your question was, where do we come up with these numbers?
That is, and it is kind of where did you come up? I'm looking for the basis and the reasoning for the proposed increases so that I can have an explanation when I'm asked, what is this based on? If I don't know, then I can't explain your position to my clients and my team, And I think it's, in all fairness to you and I need to be able to tell them, look, this is where they're coming from. And so if you could at least give me, I don't need a specific, like, a chart or anything at this point, but I just need an explanation as to what are these numbers really based on? Because then otherwise I don't want people to say, oh, they're just pulling them out of the air, seeing what they can get for it. I know that y'all worked hard on this, and I know that there's a basis and a reason for it, and that's all I'm asking for, so that I can actually have something to present,
Yeah,
So
I got you.
that's what I'm asking for right now.
And we're gonna go back in caucus and talk for a minute after we leave in, okay?
Okay. Let's see, our proposal number, and my headings are a little bit different. I kind of like the way you did it, so I'm probably gonna start doing it with the title that you did.
Okay.
Let's see. 2, 4. Here's 9, and I'll email these to you after we converse. Oh, here's an extra one.
If there's any left over, guys, let's give one to Carlos too.
I think I gave you enough for Carlos. Oh, maybe not. Yeah, I gave you 9.
Yeah.
Is there an extra?
Scott, pass.
This is our city proposal number 1, and it's under, and this is the title it was under the last contract. If we have to reorganize it in a way that I'm still, please know that we're still open to that. We need to make sure that this contract is organized and readable and easy to utilize as a tool. This is basically the alternative hiring that you had brought up earlier, which allows us to hire when we need people and not have to do it through the civil service method. This was basically based on a tentative agreement that had been agreed upon in the 2014 negotiations. The only addition I did at this point was on the second paragraph, the last sentence. It said each applicant must have and maintain a paramedic certification. What we agreed to the last time just said each applicant must have a paramedic certification. I added maintained, and this is why, because we don't want somebody to apply with a paramedic certification and for some reason during the application process or getting trained, he somehow drops it or loses it. If he does not maintain that paramedic certification during the course of being hired, then that would make him ineligible. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm,
If
sure.
we're not gonna have if we're gonna require that the applicant must have a paramedic certification upon employment, we should expect that they would have it during the course of being hired. So that's the reasoning for that, and that's the only change that was added, is just and maintain, and that's the intent of what the change was, and this is based on the last tentative agreement that we had in 2014. Oh, and the tentative agreement that we agreed to took out the provision that would, we had agreed to take out the provision that,
Sunset.
yeah, the sunset provision. This would just allow it to happen, you know, if we sign this, hopefully and we needed to do the alternative hiring, we could start doing it.
So, and, you know, I don't wanna beat a horse that's been ridden already in the last negotiations, but did y'all, I mean, is this designed primarily to get people that already have both certifications?
Yes.
Fire and paramedic certification?
Yeah, I think there's a.
And so that they could go through like a truncated, academy or something?
Yeah, and what the idea was to get people in here into the active duty faster, through a you know, just a quicker way.
Mhm.
And I think, let's see. There is a sentence in there that says applicants who do not have current firefighter basic certification prior to entering the academy must pass it in order to successfully complete the academy. So I just wanna make sure you.
So maybe somebody who's done part of a academy someplace else would be that much further
Yes.
ahead,
Mhm.
be attractive.
So that's our proposal number one that y'all can go through.
Isn't there like an alternative hiring process that's in the current contract too?
There is.
And is this different from that, or?
The
Okay.
thing is, it took out the sunset provision that was at the very bottom of the old contract, and then it just added and maintained.
Okay.
But I added that just this last time, just because I didn't want something like that to happen.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
there's nothing that says that you need to be it said you need to have a paramedic certification when you applied, but not when you actually came out. And that would, you know, that wouldn't work.
We'll have to.
Would be self-defeating.
Extra for her, so she keeps the question up. Proposal number 2, this is under working conditions. This is fairly simple. Sorry, I was just saying.
You guys got two, I don't got two.
This is just the meal reimbursement. This mirrors the language from the current contract, but with it changed it from $6 to $8. It just upped it. This was something we'd also tentatively agreed to before. I figured that we'd just do easy ones since I didn't have a lot of time today, that we kind of do easy ones that we can most likely agree to at this point. Of course, you know, y'all have the opportunity to look over them and ask questions, etc. This is our proposal number 3. Let me hand out copies to my team first. Before I go into it. I keep forgetting to get this.
Sorry.
Our proposal number 3 is the validity of the promotional list. This only talks about how long a promotional list is active. I guess there was some issues with regard
Oh,
to.
Lord, I remember this one.
We went
I
around and
remember.
around with this one.
I remember. And Craig, there's a reason why it says 11:59 p.m.
Oh, just
But-
watch the tape. Oh.
Yeah, but at any rate, this is something we tentatively agreed to. Of course, even if we were to TA this, we do have some proposal here that may affect. I remember there was a proposal at the beginning that may have to deal with the eligibility test. You were talking about maybe proposing one that lasted longer than just a year, sometimes even permanent, et cetera.
That's a reinstatement.
Oh, yeah, that was a reinstatement.
Yeah, that
list.
was a okay.
But some, you know, I mean, some.
So I didn't know if this was, if the list you were talking about was the same as a promotional list.
No,
so,
no,
okay.
just a reinstatement list. I mean, the Civil Service Act has 1-year promotional lists.
Okay, I
From
just
the
wanted
date
to
the
be,
test is
get clear
given.
on that. Okay, so the
And,
reinstatement
but I knew
was a
some
separate
cities that have
enterprise.
deviated from that, so.
Yeah, so this is just to ensure that we get the full year, because there may have been an issue one time, right, I think the issue finally came up after I don't know how many years, that the last day, you know, they didn't count the first day as 0, and so there was like a day off, and somebody may have, you know, teetered on the line. So we just wanted to be very clear about when it's valid, so that everybody knows.
No, we want it very clear too.
Yeah, and that's why we came up with, just to provide an example so that we could just be very clear on that.
This is one where you can't easily win, I mean, you know, because you've got firefighters on both sides of the issue once the test is given. If the
Right.
rule isn't clear. Yeah.
Okay, and this is our proposal number 4. This is a mileage reimbursement.
Yeah. He said,
Here you go, Bob.
he said, you take one and I'll take care of the rest.
What this basically said, the mileage reimbursement language in the old contract was antiquated, and it had something about like no more than 32 cents or something like that. What basically this does is, and I believe we had tentatively agreed to it with when, let me just tell you something that changed. The mileage reimbursement is now written so that it is pursued the same as every other general employee. Basically, you get reimbursed through the IRS guidelines. The only exception is, and I believe it's happened like once in I don't know how many years, but it happened at one time during a very an economic crisis, was that there was a budget shortfall, and the financial services declared a reduced rate for a very short amount of time. So if that happens under those special circumstances, it's across the board. So basically, it just establishes any mileage reimbursement the same as it would across the city for anybody. Okay.
The new mileage rate for 2015 is 57.5 cents.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
I'm kind of surprised by that. I thought it would go down a little because of the
I thought
declining
so,
gas
too.
prices, but it went up.
Maybe that's a sign to buy gas now, buy gas futures.
Well, it's just recently.
They know something we don't.
Yeah. I had some other proposals, but because they address issues that are addressed here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna prepare counter proposals. That
Okay.
way we work on the same document. And
I think that's great. I
It's
think
more
that's great.
efficient, it's a little bit more organized.
And the only thing I would ask you to do, and you've already done it, is just date your proposals, and as we get towards the end, you might even want to put a clock time on it too.
I saw that.
Because I've had situations where we've exchanged, 3 proposals in a day.
Right.
And you just want to make sure you know the order.
We have had that situation, and it's hard if you don't keep track of it yourself. Once we go forward with this and we start exchanging more, I will start to include the time. I did notice that on yours. But all that I gave you today were those, so I think we're good with that.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, we ain't getting any more.
Yeah, so, but we will take all these back. I appreciate everybody's time in being here. I know this is a difficult job, but we're gonna work through it, and we're gonna get to the end, and, I'm really excited.
Yeah, me too.
And any questions that come up whatsoever, email them to me, but I will have Lilia and Renato will be covering me for the next week, so they're assigned to help gather the information that is requested if you need.
And they'll be on the email that you're going to send me these
Yes.
electronically.
Mhm.
Very good.
And I believe that's all that I have for today.
Okay, guys, thank you all. It's nice to meet you all.
Thank
Hard
you.
working
Very
with you.
nice as well. Very nice to